Chapter 61. Story Divergence. We are on the brink of great change. Ashal Eduardo stood amidst the massive crowds, watching as blind faith consumed them. He cast a glance at the man beside him, a figure so still, so detached, that even his eyes seemed void of light. For better or worse, Bloodmater's response made Ashal pause. Isn't this what you wanted, Raphael? The war you've longed for is finally upon us. Bloodmater shook his head. I never desired war, Ashal. But sometimes, it is the only way. With that, he turned to leave. Ashal's voice followed him. Where are you going? The director stopped for a brief moment. To finish what I started. I will lead the charge. I'm returning to the border. Are you certain about this? Ashal clasped his hands behind his back, speaking with an air of indifference. The temple is in a precarious state. Leave now, and you may come to regret it. Bloodmater simply smiled before vanishing, his voice lingering in the air. Do not underestimate the temple, Ashal. Fry Starlight's POV. I sat at my desk, tapping my fingers against its surface, lost in thought. A few minutes ago, I had received a call from my sister, Ada. I hadn't expected it to be anything important. Once again, I was wrong. Disaster. This was a catastrophe. I had always known that even the smallest change could disrupt the course of events, but I never imagined it would escalate this much. The church had moved far earlier than expected. And with that, the war I had dreaded was arriving ahead of schedule. At this rate, I might end up caught in it myself. A whirlwind of thoughts threatened to consume me, but I snapped myself out of it with a sharp slap to the face. Calm down. It's not like the war will start immediately. They would need at least a year to prepare to locate the hero. After all, that so-called hero was currently here within the temple. That gave me just enough time. Enough time to escape this world. With my mind made up, I left my room. Hunger gnawed at me. I had considered visiting Shaheen, but indulging in too much spicy food would ignite an entirely different kind of war inside my stomach. So I opted for something else. As I wandered through the temple streets, now eerily quiet in the wake of recent events, I found myself enjoying the crisp air and silence. Let the strong handle the Empire's protection. I need to focus on what must be done. Too many eyes were on me. If their suspicions continued to grow, it would only be a matter of time before I was eliminated. And I needed to find the true contractor on my own. Luckily, a name surfaced in my mind. Whether it was the right one or not, the days ahead would reveal the truth. But for now, time to fill my stomach. Reaching the restaurant district, I seized the opportunity to enter one of the city's most renowned French establishments. Normally, a place like this would have an endless queue, but today, the path was clear. The moment I stepped inside, a rich, tantalizing aroma filled my senses. The grand dining hall stretched before me. Tables draped in pristine white linens, the golden glow of chandeliers casting a warm, elegant light. The place was completely empty. I moved forward at my own pace, but as I did, I noticed a girl sitting at the first table. With her youthful features and striking green hair, she was devouring a perfectly cooked steak with enthusiasm. At the sound of approaching footsteps, she froze, lifting her head. For a brief second, our eyes met. She still had the piece of meat in her mouth, until it slipped from her lips. Fry Starlight. Her face drained of color as she scrambled backward, nearly toppling over. I frowned. Who is this? With trembling hands, she fumbled through her pockets before pulling out a book. Stay back. I immediately recognized it. The Holy Scripture of the Church. And this girl, Amelia Adderix, a student from Class A. I sighed at her exaggerated reaction. Why are you shoving that ridiculous book in my face? I took a step forward. She instinctively took one back. Stay away. So much for a peaceful meal. Spare me the nonsense. I'm just here to eat. She didn't seem convinced. The faint glow forming around her arms made that clear. Please, don't kill me. Tears welled up at the corners of her eyes, making her look even more like a frightened child. I ran a hand over my face. Did I really create such a foolish character? Kill you? Do you seriously think I'm an assassin? She believed every rumor she heard. She had probably listened to the countless whispers about me. Even so, she refused to lower her guard. I needed to end this quickly before we both got thrown out. You don't believe me? Then let's do this. I stepped forward. The light around her body flared, shining with even greater intensity.
No.
Stop. I didn't. Standing just a step away, she finally unleashed a wave of divine energy from her hands. A golden aura engulfed me, its presence undeniable, cleansing, purifying. Yet nothing happened. The reaction Amelia had been expecting never came. So this was the Lord of Light's power, the force those fanatics followed so blindly. I exhaled deeply, motioning toward myself. See? Nothing. She was a saint candidate for the church. The Lord of Light's power directly opposed demonic aura. If I had been a true contractor, the signs would have been undeniable. Yet here I stood, untouched. Amelia's expression twisted in shock as she murmured, "Nothing happened? Foolish girl." After that absurd encounter, I found a seat far away from Amelia. I indulged in a variety of dishes, savoring every bite. This place could easily earn 3 Michelin stars if it existed in my world. But nothing compared to Shaheen's cooking. I was midway through my meal when I caught Amelia sneaking glances at me from across the room. When our eyes met again, she spoke without thinking. "Are you really not one of them?" I took a sip of my soup before replying, indifferent. "Come closer if you want to talk." She was seated at the farthest corner. Honestly, if not for my enhanced senses, I wouldn't have even heard her soft voice. I resumed eating, sensing her hesitation. After a few moments of internal struggle, she finally relented, making her way toward my table and sitting across from me. I gestured to the feast before us. "Eat whatever you like." She seemed taken aback, but even a fool could tell. She had been staring at the food, not me. A smirk tugged at my lips as she hesitated. "Looks like the church doesn't pay you well." "Shut up. We don't take more than our share. Excess is a sin." It was obvious she wasn't entirely convinced by her own words. So, I decided to push her a little more. "Excess, huh? But I don't think I'll be able to finish all this food. Wouldn't it be wasteful to throw it away?" Giving her a reason to eat, she hesitated for a moment before picking up her fork and reaching out for the food. "If you put it that way, I guess there's no choice. Yes, wastefulness is a sin too." Seeing the blush on her face and her childlike expression, I felt an urge to tease her even more. The girl in front of me was the closest thing to a child, making her all the more endearing. We sat together for a while, eating in relative silence. At first, she ate hesitantly, but it didn't take long for her to drop the pretense and reveal her true self, savoring the delicious food without restraint. I wasn't worried about the cost. Given my status in the Starlight family, she could eat as much as she wanted. Perhaps she grew uncomfortable under my gaze, because she suddenly decided to change the subject. "Tell me, do you believe in the Lord of Light?" Hearing her question, I leaned on my left hand. "And why do you ask?" She looked away, unable to maintain eye contact for too long. "Well, you didn't react to the holy power I unleashed on you earlier, so I thought maybe you were a secret believer." Her words gave me pause, stirring old memories I had written down long ago. Leaning back in my chair, I finally answered, "The Lord of Light exists, without a doubt, but I don't follow the church." I was about to continue, but she suddenly cut me off. "Then you are a good person after all." "Hey, don't interrupt me." She pouted at my reaction but ignored me completely, her previous wariness now gone. Did she really trust anyone affiliated with the church so blindly? If so, her future looked bleak. I glanced out the window, murmuring to myself, "The Lord of Light, huh?" He was real, that much was certain. The holy sword Vermithor was undeniable proof of that. But to worship him as a supreme being, That was the biggest nonsense I'd ever heard. In the first place, neither humans nor demons were the only creatures inhabiting this vast universe. Somewhere beyond our lands, other entities, just like us, struggled to survive. And they were the ones holding back the high-seat demons. That was the only reason our world still stood. The so-called Lord of Light was merely one of those entities. Nothing more, nothing less. And yet, the people of this empire remained oblivious. I was lost in thought, barely aware of the girl sitting across from me, until a few unexpected words dragged me back to reality. At least you're better than Ferrith. Huh. I immediately turned to face her. What did you just say? Amelia hesitated, taken aback by my reaction, but repeated herself nonetheless. I said you're better than Ferrith. Her words surprised me. Why mention Ferrith now, of all times? Why him, specifically? Amelia was naive, too naive. She kept talking, unaware of whether she should be saying any of this. Well, you and Ferrith are the only ones mentioned in the rumors. I frowned at her response. I had suspected Ferrith more than anyone else, but I hadn't expected others to do the same. Pausing to gather my thoughts, I asked, "Did you ever test your holy power on him?" She nodded. Yes, Miss Sophia personally asked me to do it after the last target test. But nothing happened. She placed a finger on her lips, deep in thought. But, am I even allowed to tell you this? I left her to her own musings as I processed the information. So I wasn't the only one suspicious of Ferrith. Even the professors had their doubts. But the fact that he resisted Amelia's holy power left only two possibilities. Either he was truly innocent, or his contract was so strong that a low-tier saint candidate like Amelia couldn't detect it. At that moment I smiled. It had to be the latter. Ferrith was most likely the leader of the contracted students within the temple, the same role Fry held in the original events. But I couldn't be certain just yet. Rising from my seat, I turned to leave. Amelia was still mumbling to herself when she noticed. Where are you going? I'm heading out. Eat as much as you want. The bill's on me. I waved at her before making my way outside. After settling the payment, I stepped out into the night. It was already late, so I quickly returned to my room. Time was running out, so I pulled up my quest list, hoping to find new missions to help me reach the 10,000 achievement points I needed. But when I checked the list, I was utterly dumbfounded. Side quest: kiss one of the elite class girls. The reward increases depending on the girl in question. Was this system seriously giving me a quest like this? A kiss? What was this, some kind of high school romance story? I sighed, mulling it over. Honestly, the difficulty of this quest depended entirely on who I chose. If I went with someone like Adriana, I could probably get away with it, though the reward wouldn't be much. But if I attempted it with Saris or Sansa, I didn't even want to think about the consequences. For now, I'd keep this mission as a last resort and focus on defeating Ghost instead. He was the only one left, and he had already given me 750 points after all. I couldn't sleep that night, so I found myself heading to the dueling grounds. To my surprise, I wasn't alone. Clan of Starlight was there, along with a few students from Class A, and Ferrith himself. It suddenly made sense why the training grounds were always empty when I came. I had only ever visited them in the mornings. Training in a crowded space was annoying, but perhaps this was a good opportunity to observe Ferrith up close. Grabbing a training sword, I walked toward one of the dummies and started practicing. I focused on my movements, ignoring the people around me. But for some reason, a strange chill crept down my spine that night. Chapter 62. Signs of Disaster. The sky slowly darkened as the sun disappeared beyond the horizon. Inside one of the temple's cafes, a well-dressed man sat, sipping his coffee while admiring the view. At some point, he glanced at his watch. It was just past 7. Taking a final sip, he stood up, leaving a few silver coins on the table, much to the delight of the staff. He strolled leisurely through the temple's vast grounds, which resembled a small city. Turn after turn, he found himself alone, having ventured deep into the dimly lit alleys. Eventually, he stopped, In the pitch-black darkness, his figure vanished entirely, leaving only his crimson eyes gleaming through the void. He pulled out a strange device, a crystal with a deep violet hue. With a single tap, an eerie silhouette materialized. A man clad in a black suit, his face completely obscured. Though he appeared ordinary, the red-eyed man's reaction suggested otherwise. The moment the figure emerged, he knelt on one knee. "Greetings, my lord." The suited man remained unfazed, skipping pleasantries altogether. "Is everything ready?" "Yes, the preparations are complete. I await your command." The faceless man gave a slight nod. Clearly, he had no interest in idle chatter, seeking to end the conversation as swiftly as possible. Before vanishing, he left behind a final warning. "Don't mess this up, Kai Luke. This is your only chance to ascend." Kai Luke remained kneeling until the projection faded. Slowly, he rose to his feet. His expression was calm, but the cracks forming along the nearby buildings betrayed his true emotions. His fists clenched tightly, his crimson eyes burning with an ominous glow. At that moment, no one knew what kind of storm was about to descend upon the temple. Fry Starlight POV. Sweat dripped down my skin after hours of intense training. Over the past few hours, I had tested a variety of techniques, from solo drills to sparring with others. Surprisingly, the experience had been more rewarding than expected. I even found new sparring partners. The lingering heat in my muscles fueled my desire for one final match before calling it a day. I was about to ask Snow when I noticed a tall young man with long blonde hair approaching me. With a friendly smile, he raised his sword. "How about a duel?" Seeing Faritha's polite demeanor, I couldn't help but chuckle. "You want a rematch?" Hearing the teasing tone in my voice, Farith frowned slightly. But what he did next genuinely caught me off guard. He bowed his head slightly. "I apologize for my past behavior. I now realize how childish and unfair I was toward you. Fry, I don't expect you to forgive me, but I hope this can at least make up for it a little." His words made me freeze for a moment, and even the others nearby halted their training upon hearing them. I was stunned. Was this really Farith, the typical third-rate villain, saying something like that? He was the one I had always believed was meant to replace the old Fry in this version of the story. Everything pointed to him being the likely suspect, but recent events had started to challenge that assumption. Still, since he approached me on his own, I wasn't about to waste the opportunity to dig deeper. I patted his shoulder with a grin. "It's fine. I overreacted back then too. No hard feelings." "I'm glad to hear that." After exchanging polite smiles, I made my way to one of the nearby arenas. "Shall we begin?" At my question, he nodded. "Come at me whenever you're ready." Raising my sword, I immediately shifted into combat mode. My previous friendly demeanor vanished, replaced by cold focus. "Farith Earlet, this might be my chance to bring you into the light and end this once and for all." Skipping unnecessary warm-ups, I lunged forward, slashing with a surge of dark aura. Farith reacted swiftly, deflecting my strike with a sharp parry. Our swords clashed, locking together in a fierce struggle. He thought he had blocked my attack, until 10 identical copies of myself emerged, striking simultaneously at multiple points on his body. Sensing danger, he conjured several wind barriers, blocking my attacks in an instant. Yet somehow, he immediately pinpointed my real position, launching a counterattack that forced us into a close-quarters clash. Outside the arena, several spectators watched intently. Standing side by side, Snow and Dawn observed the duel. After the first exchange, Dawn muttered in surprise, "Fry is more aggressive than usual." Snow remained silent, simply watching. Meanwhile, I continued pressing Farith. He was much stronger than the last time we fought, but I had anticipated that. I quickly scanned the training ground, noting the presence of many people, most notably Snow. My goal was to push Farith into revealing his true nature. If he lost control, Snow and I would be able to restrain him. The real question was, how? No matter how much I pressured him, he wouldn't crack. If anything, he was handling my attacks too well. If I unleashed my full power, this wouldn't be considered a simple spar anymore. I sank into deep thought. How do I force him to use his demonic power? Recalling what I knew about demon contracts, an idea struck me. Demons were fueled by emotions, anger, hatred, and love. A smirk crossed my lips as I took a few steps back. Let's test this. You've improved a lot, Farith. At my words, he adjusted his stance. Glad to hear it, but I still have a long way to go. No, you're really strong. I bet plenty of girls would fall for you like this. I lunged forward again, our swords clashing violently. Taking advantage of my close proximity, I threw out my next words. Girls like Sansa, for example. For a fraction of a second, he froze. I carefully studied his reaction. I needed a response. But instead of what I expected, he simply chuckled, pushing me back. I'd be happy if that happened. A normal response?
Impossible.
I pressed further, determined to dig deeper. Oh? So you're admitting you like her? Despite our relentless swordplay, my voice carried through clearly. He feigned calmness, answering nonchalantly. I can't answer that. Seeing him pretend to be flustered, I intensified my attack. So I was right. But are you sure about that, Farith? What do you mean? Sparks flew as our swords clashed with increasing intensity, a stark contrast to the nature of our conversation. What do I mean? I paused briefly before continuing. Honestly, your chances are close to zero. Farith, I'd suggest giving up. Dark aura surged as I unleashed a series of rapid slashes. She's a princess, after all. I doubt she'd ever fall for someone like you. She's out of your league, Farith. Farith had been silent for a while now, doing nothing but defending. I watched him, growing restless. Come on, do it. I just made you hear the words you hate the most. Fight back. I waited for an angry outburst. But instead, Farith simply smiled as the wind surged fiercely around him. Thanks for the advice, Fry. But I won't give up that easily. This time he attacked, but it wasn't the reaction I was expecting. We clashed for a while longer, but in the end, neither of us could overpower the other, so we stopped. Good match. He thanked me before walking away. I watched his retreating figure, my expression unreadable. What was that? If someone had mentioned Saris to the old Fry, he would have snapped immediately. Yet, Farith Earlet barely reacted. That was almost impossible. Demonic contracts were supposed to amplify emotions. Could it be that Farith wasn't the contractor after all? I found myself unsettled. For some reason, the chill I had felt earlier refused to fade. Not even after leaving the training hall. That night, I returned to my room late, took a shower to wash off the sweat, and collapsed onto my bed. I was exhausted and fell asleep instantly. The next morning, as usual, I headed to class early. Most of the lessons were dull, except for Sophia's. I sat through Fleming's lecture on elemental affinities for what felt like the 100th time. Struggling to keep my eyes open, I fought off the overwhelming urge to sleep. When class finally ended, I stood up and made my way toward two girls who were about to leave. As I stepped in front of them, blocking their path, both Sansa and Adriana halted. The latter instinctively hid behind Sansa. By now, I was used to this reaction, so I wasn't surprised. Instead, I focused on the princess. Can I have a moment? Sansa frowned slightly, her brows knitting together. Do you need something? I just want to talk. Then speak here. I raised an eyebrow at her response. Was she mad at me? In private, if you don't mind. Seeing my insistence, she stared at me for a moment before sighing in resignation. Go ahead first, Adriana. I'll catch up later. At that moment, Adriana leaned in, covering her mouth as she whispered in Sansa's ear, clearly trying to keep me from hearing. Are you sure about this? You know the rumors about him. What if he? It's fine. I'll be okay. But, Adriana, I'll be fine. Just go. I stared at them blankly. What's the point of whispering when I can hear even the quietest sounds? After a brief exchange, Adriana reluctantly left. Meanwhile, Sansa and I stepped out of the classroom together. We had an hour before the next lecture. The moment I left the room, my body relaxed. For some reason, the strange sense of danger I had felt earlier that morning returned the moment I entered the classroom, leaving me puzzled. I decided to think about it later and focused on the girl in front of me instead. She walked ahead, her face unreadable. Since I knew she wouldn't speak first, I took the initiative. Is something wrong? She was clearly upset with me. I don't know. You tell me, she said. Is there? I wouldn't be asking if I knew the answer. Silence followed. Soon, we reached a vending machine stocked with various drinks. I grabbed a soda for myself before turning to ask what she wanted. She simply pointed. Iced tea then. After getting our drinks, we sat down at one of the benches nearby. So, what do you want? I took a sip before answering. First, can you drop the hostility? What hostility? This aura of yours. I have no idea what you're talking about. I sighed. I'd never understand this girl. Out of all the characters in this world, she was the only one I hadn't written, and that often made her a source of endless frustration. At least tell me why. I'm in a tough spot here. She glanced at me before shaking her head. You've got some nerve, Fry. After pushing me away, you now act as if nothing happened. Pushing her away? Was she talking about that time? Frowning, I responded. My reaction was natural. You were the one who doubted me. I only asked if you were okay. And of course, I doubted you. I know exactly what kind of person you are. Maybe you were deceived, or maybe you're after power and benefits. When people hear the name Fry Starlight, anything is possible. Hearing her words, I lowered my gaze. Ignoring her unwavering stare, I silently continued drinking. She's not wrong. At least if she was talking about the old Fry. But that person was long gone. I refocused on her when she pointed out something important. If you doubt me, then why did you follow me here alone? At my question, she tilted her head slightly and looked to the side indifferently. I simply realized that demons wouldn't waste their time dealing with an idiot. At that moment, I nearly choked on my drink. That was a dumb question. Everyone had seen us leave together earlier, and some might even be watching me now. I had forgotten she was a princess. Choosing to ignore it, I got straight to the point. Let's just forget it, Sansa. Call it even. Just say what you need to say. I took a moment before asking, all right, this might sound strange, but have you ever felt like you were being targeted? She tilted her head. Targeted? Yeah, like, do you ever feel like someone is watching you? Or maybe someone has been getting close to you a lot recently. Seeing how serious I was, she laughed. The only person who's been getting close to me lately is you. And the one staring the most is also you. Ha! My expression betrayed me. Only then did I finally realize what she meant. I smacked my forehead. I had been observing her frequently after learning about her story. Had she noticed every single time? Somehow, the coldness from earlier disappeared as the princess chuckled. I'm just messing with you. Why are you reacting like this now? Seeing my silence, she finally answered my question seriously. Let's see. I don't feel like anyone's watching me. I get a few stares here and there, but nothing unusual. As for people getting close to me, well, a lot of them do because of my status. Other than that, nothing else. I lowered my head, deep in thought, before looking at her again. What about a confession? A love confession? My question made her pause. After staring for a moment, she sighed before answering. Because of my position as a princess, no one can approach me that way. You already know that. I knew most of my questions sounded ridiculous, but I had to ask them to confirm my suspicions about Ferrith. She studied me for a while before speaking again. Why are you asking these questions now? Are you worried about me? I nodded in response. Yeah, I suppose so. She hadn't expected that answer, which explained the surprise on her face. I didn't want to admit that I had done it for my own reasons. Since I had already resolved things with her, there was no point in stirring things up again. That's not like you, Fry. Are you actually worried about someone other than yourself? I do, from time to time. Seeing that I didn't deny it, she idly played with her fingers. Well, there's no need to worry. I am a princess, after all. It won't be that easy to lay a hand on me. I nodded. She was right. If her situation was anything like Prince Aegon's, then there were surely unseen eyes watching us even now. There was no way someone of her status would be left unguarded. A quiet pause followed as we both finished our drinks. Then, almost absent-mindedly, I asked, "You once told me you can read emotions just by looking at someone's face, right?" She nodded. "Then tell me, what do you usually see when you look at mine?" She remained silent for a moment before answering. "If I had to put it into words, sadness. For some reason, that's the emotion I see the most." "I see." That was oddly reassuring. At the very least, my emotions and desires were still present. They hadn't completely faded away. She seemed like she wanted to ask more, but in the end, she held back. Maybe because we weren't that close. "To be honest, you've become harder to read lately. Everything about you feels different, like you're a completely different person." I leaned back in my chair, answering her in a relaxed tone. "That's only natural." Our eyes met. "After all, I'm not Fry." Silence followed. Chapter 63, Seeds of Doubt 1. Fry Starlight's POV. "This is only natural, after all. I am not Fry." A heavy silence settled over the place as Sansa's face twisted in confusion. "Not Fry." I nodded. "Then, what should I call you?" Her question caught me off guard. Should I tell her my real name? I quickly dismissed the idea. On second thought, "I am Fry. Are you messing with me?" "Not at all." She exhaled a long sigh, stepping back slightly as she muttered under her breath. "You know what's funny? As ridiculous as your words sound, I don't feel like you're lying." "That's because I'm not." At that moment, we both stood up, making our way back to class. "You know, Fry, I've never once questioned this ability of mine. It's been with me since birth. But for the first time, you made me doubt it." I remained silent. Even I wasn't sure why I told her the truth. Was I supposed to say, "Hey, I created this world, and you along with it?" Or should I just tell her I reincarnated from another world? Neither option made sense. The moment those words left my mouth, I realized how foolish it was. So I contradicted myself immediately. She probably thinks I'm insane now. I settled into my usual seat at the back of the classroom, waiting for the lesson to begin. From across the room, I spotted Adriana fussing over Sansa, worry etched on her face. I was certain I had officially become Adriana's personal nightmare. Before long, the rest of the students returned, and class resumed. An hour of Sophia's lesson flew by, unlike the other lectures that always seemed to drag on. Nothing particularly noteworthy happened except for one thing: the strange shift in the relationship between Ferrith and his entourage. Felt different. Or rather, Ferrith seemed to be treating them more kindly. I'd be lying if I said that didn't bother me. For the first time, I started questioning my own conclusions, my so-called knowledge of this world. That was why my laptop now rested on my desk, hidden from sight. I was seriously considering using the author's advice feature to confirm the true contractor's identity. But when I saw the updated pricing, I nearly lost my mind. Random advice, 100 achievement points. Direct advice, 500 achievement points. The moment I saw those numbers, my face twisted in irritation. Last time I used this ability, it only cost double-digit points. How the hell did it suddenly skyrocket to this? I ruffled my hair in frustration, exhaling in defeat. I couldn't afford to waste more points now. The anti-magic was crucial to countering the upcoming attack. I wouldn't be this cautious if the events had played out as they did in the original story, where the protagonist and the professors managed to repel the invasion. But now, everything had changed with just 3 words. Difficulty level raised. I had no idea which path we were heading down anymore. That was why I needed to prepare for every possibility. Not to mention the skill I needed to steal from the man leading the invasion. With a heavy sigh, I closed my laptop. I had no choice but to rely on myself. That or kiss every girl in class. Just as I was about to make my move, a familiar chill crawled down my spine. It happened the moment Sophia left the room. I scanned the classroom carefully. Not many people remained. Farith and his group, Saris, whom I had been deliberately avoiding, and the Prince Aegon. No matter how much I focused, I couldn't pinpoint the source of this unease. It was starting to get under my skin. I decided to leave before drawing unwanted attention. As I stepped into the hallway, I spotted a familiar figure. My cousin, Clanna Starlight, was talking to a young man with white hair and black eyes. He wore the white uniform of the Abyss class, its emblem displayed on his chest. The moment our eyes met, a wide grin stretched across my face. Well, if it isn't dear cousin Emmond. Damn, I completely forgot about him. Emmond's expression twisted in disgust the instant he saw me, as if he had just swallowed something rotten. Fry, it's been a while. How's the Abyss class treating you? This guy was the first person to pick a fight with me in this world, so naturally, I enjoyed provoking him whenever I had the chance. Of course, bringing up the Abyss class only reminded him of his failure to enter the elite class. The veins on his forehead bulged in response. You bastard! To my surprise, he immediately closed the distance between us. Looks like his temper hasn't improved at all. I barely had time to react before his clenched fist came flying toward my face. But before he could land a hit, Clanna swiftly stepped between us, blocking him. That's enough. If you two want to fight, at least do it somewhere I don't have to see it. At her words, I raised my hands in surrender. I have no interest in fighting. I'd never dream of crossing swords with an Abyss student. Clanna shot me a warning glare for continuing to provoke her brother. Meanwhile, Emmond's face was turning red with rage. Don't get cocky, Fry. The class divisions mean nothing here. I can still crush you anytime I want. Bold words. Just what I'd expect from an Abyss student. We've been putting off our duel for too long. How about we settle things now? Bring it on, you bastard. Before he could charge at me, a slender hand grabbed his wrist, yanking him back. That's enough. Fry, you do realize what a duel with him would mean right now, don't you? Her words snapped me back to my senses. I had let my excitement get the better of me. I nodded in understanding, and she took that as her cue to drag Emmond away. He continued shouting at her, but she didn't let go. She was right. The Abyss class and the Elite class had a deeply rooted rivalry. That was why it was rare to see an Abyss student wandering around here, Emmond being an exception. If I had fought him now and crushed him, it would have provoked a backlash from the Abyss class, something I had no interest in dealing with. The real hostility burned strongest among the second years and beyond. Since we were still in our first year, we had yet to experience it in full. The Elite class nurtured those with exceptional talent, while the Abyss class focused on hard work and perseverance, often taking in students with lower potential. Their conflict wasn't ending anytime soon. That day, I returned to my room, unable to shake the gnawing doubts in my mind. Chapter 64. Seeds of Doubt 2. Days passed one after another. I grew more and more bewildered by Farith's behavior. He had practically transformed into a saint. He was even forging friendships with students from Class A, which only worsened my headache. His actions completely contradicted those of the contractor. And if Farith wasn't the one, then who was? I was especially concerned because the invasion event was only 3 days away, and that lingering sense of unease still hadn't disappeared. It would creep up at times, then vanish again, leaving me even more uncertain. The only good news was the update to the side quest list. Most of the new side quests were ridiculous, things like skipping class or causing minor disruptions, but they were easy to complete, bringing me closer to my goal. Unfortunately, the only remaining tasks were the kissing mission and defeating Ghost, who I could never seem to find. I was lost in thought when suddenly, a muscular hand clamped down on my shoulder. What's with that dumb stare? I turned to find Danzo standing beside me. Nothing. Just spaced out for a bit. Quit wasting time on pointless thoughts. Let's get out of here before I suffocate. Sure, but I don't see Ragna anywhere. Danzo shoved his hands into his pockets and started walking toward the exit. No idea. He said he had something to take care of. I see. After walking beside him for a while, curiosity got the better of me. Tell me, Danzo, what do you think of the current situation? What situation? The assassinations, the contractors hiding among us. Who do you think they are? He was silent for a moment before answering. I don't know, and thinking about it won't change anything. His indifference made me throw out a possibility. What if the rumors about me being one of them were true? Then I just have to fight and kill you. Simple as that. His bluntness made me chuckle. That easy, huh? He nodded. There's no point in overthinking it. Smarter and more capable people have already tried. The spies, the contractors, whoever they are, they'll reveal themselves eventually. When they do, we take them down. I couldn't help but smile. Straightforward and simple. I wished I could see things that way. Eventually, we stepped out of the elite class building. We found ourselves outside, standing around aimlessly. You want to do something? Hearing my question, he answered immediately. I'm hungry. At that, I took the lead, gesturing for him to follow. Come on. I'll have you try something spicy today. He frowned slightly. Something spicy? I led him to a particular tent serving traditional food he wasn't used to. The entire experience, from start to finish, was hilarious. From the odd way of sitting to the surprise on Old Man Shaheen's face when he saw an extra customer. Not to mention Danzo's reaction when he took his first bite of the spicy food. He spat it out at me, yelling, "Are you trying to kill me?" I caught the flying plate effortlessly and set it back on the table. Don't be a baby. That was just one spoonful. Something about my reaction must have sparked his competitive side because he noticed I was already finishing my own plate. Give it here. I'll show you who's the baby. Like an enraged dragon, he kept exhaling fiery breaths after every bite, but stubbornly finished his meal. That hour passed in a way I hadn't experienced in a long time. Somehow, it reminded me of the days I spent with my real friends in places like this. I glanced at Danzo, sitting across from me, his eyes bloodshot as he chugged milk like his life depended on it. Come to think of it, the main characters in this world were all inspired by my real friends. Danzo was one of them. I muttered under my breath. So this was bound to happen, huh? Huh? Speak up, man. I snapped back to attention. I said, how about another round? For once, his expression betrayed him. His face turned pale. In the end, we didn't stay long and left the tent. That was a good meal. Danzo, however, didn't seem to agree. Good meal, my ass? That was torture. After chatting for a bit, we finally noticed something odd. For some reason, the atmosphere was more chaotic than usual. Students were moving frantically, as if something big had happened. I frowned. More assassinations? I quickly dismissed the thought. No way. They wouldn't act before the major assault. We blended into the crowd, trying to understand what was going on. Then, Danzo spotted some familiar faces. Oi! You three idiots, wait up! Following his gaze, I saw Ferrith and his group nearby. So, you guys are here too. Ignoring Ferrith's unusually friendly tone, I got straight to the point. What's going on? Ferrith hesitated for a second before answering. They've already found all the contractors. Ha! I barely processed his words. As we made our way to the dorms, Ferrith explained properly. Apparently, the church has taken control. They sent envoys into the temple, triggering a large-scale purge. Since holy energy directly opposes demonic energy, the contractors were exposed immediately. Danzo scoffed. And here I thought they'd be a real threat. I intentionally kept out of the conversation. A purge like this never happened in the original story. Once again, the changes were forcing themselves in. But Ferrith's next words caught my attention. It's not over yet. We're next. Apparently, they've sent a high-ranking saint candidate to the elite dorms. The church is more serious than ever. I was confused. What unsettled me wasn't the church's actions or the premature elimination of the contractors. It was Ferrith's calm demeanor. If a high-ranking saint candidate had really been sent, Ferrith wouldn't be able to hide if he were the leader of the contractors inside the temple. Which meant, was he not actually the one? Then why had I felt that same sense of danger since the first time we met? This had gone on for so long that I was getting sick of it. That suffocating feeling, like a blade pressed against my throat. It was time to find out the truth. Hawk's Eye. I activated my skill, expanding my vision to 360 degrees. Focusing my aura around my eyes, I pushed the ability to its limits, hoping to uncover something. As I scanned my surroundings, time seemed to slow down. Then, my eyes widened. After all this time, I finally saw it. That strange energy lurking in Ferrith's shadow. Inside it was someone I already knew. Was that ghost? At last, I understood why I had always felt that sense of danger. Because of how similar our abilities were, I was the only one who could sense him. Ghost Umbra. I let out a quiet laugh. It seemed I wasn't the only one who suspected you, Ferrith. Chapter 65. Seeking the Truth. Fry Starlight POV. I entered the elite dormitory alongside Danzo, Ferrith, and his entourage, only to find a crowd of unfamiliar faces waiting for us. It wasn't just the first years. Upperclassmen were here as well. My gaze instinctively swept over them, searching for any notable figures. Sure enough, I recognized a few individuals who would one day lead the coming war. I remembered every moment I had written about them. And now, seeing so many of my own characters standing before me left me feeling utterly bewildered as an author. At the center of the hall stood Ellen White, president of the Elite Student Council. She commanded the room effortlessly, organizing the crowd with nothing but her voice. Beside her was a table, and in front of it sat a girl, flanked by two masked men radiating an overwhelming pressure. But my attention was drawn entirely to her. I had been wondering who the high-level saint candidate was that everyone had been talking about. Turns out it was her. A young woman who appeared to be in her early 20s, with long blonde hair, part of it braided. Her deep blue eyes and mature, striking features exuded beauty, complemented by her well-proportioned figure. She had finally appeared, one of the main heroines alongside Ceres. Uriel Platini, the most prominent saint candidate. She sat calmly at her table, completely indifferent to the people around her, leaving everything to Ellen. Then, Ellen's voice echoed throughout the hall, cutting straight to the point. First years, step forward in order according to your number for the examination. At her words, a boy with white hair and golden eyes stepped forward. Snow Lionheart, taking the initiative. He sat before Uriel, who gave him a soft smile before speaking in a gentle voice. Please, give me your hand. Snow complied without hesitation. In response, Uriel gently took hold of his arm. She closed her eyes, and immediately, a golden aura surged around them, enveloping them both. The entire hall fell into silent awe, captivated by the sheer purity of the power radiating from her. Compared to this, the so-called sacred power of Emilia Atterix barely deserved the title. Even from a distance, I could feel the weight of her strength. As expected of the girl destined to become the saint. The examination didn't last long. As anticipated, Snow passed without issue. One by one, students from Class A stepped forward, only for the same result to repeat over and over. A tense atmosphere settled over the room. Everyone here knew exactly what would happen if a contractor was discovered. After all, those masked figures weren't just for show. But I wasn't concerned about that. My attention was fixed solely on the young man standing beside me. What will you do now, Ferrith? By now, Uriel had finished with Class A and had moved on to Class B. A particularly captivating sight unfolded as Ceres sat across from Uriel, two of the main heroines, face to face. Time seemed to slow as Ferrith's turn approached. And then, the moment finally arrived. I watched, my gaze glued to him, as the long-haired blonde made his way forward. I scrutinized every single step he took. There was no escaping this. Even the old fry wouldn't have been able to hide himself from Uriel's eyes. It was simply impossible. Right before me, Ferrith took his seat, extending his hand with a calm expression. With her slender hands, Uriel grasped his. As before, the golden light slowly engulfed them. I held my breath, waiting for the moment when the dark power within him would awaken. But to my utter disbelief, Uriel smiled before gently releasing his hand. "Thank you for your patience. You may proceed." Ferrith nodded and walked away unfazed. Meanwhile, I stood there, frozen, unable to comprehend what I had just witnessed. He is innocent? My thoughts raced, desperately searching for an explanation, only to come up empty. There were only two possibilities. Either he was truly innocent, or my name was called. Letting out a slow breath, I steadied myself and stepped forward, taking a seat across from Uriel. The girl before me was mature and breathtaking, beautiful enough to rival Sarah's moonlight. But at this moment, I had no room in my mind to appreciate her charm. "Please, give me your hand." I obeyed, offering my left hand. As before, she gently took hold of it. The process repeated. Pure aura flowed into me. It was calm, gentle, so much so that it touched my heart. At that moment, Uriel, who had kept her eyes closed, suddenly frowned. Her reaction did not go unnoticed. One of the masked men immediately asked, "Is something wrong?" A chill ran down my spine. What now? The thought of antagonizing the church at this stage sent a shiver through me, but her next words doused me in cold water. She let go of my hand and smiled faintly. "No, it's nothing. He's clear. You may go, Fry Starlight." I nodded and stood up, leaving as fast as I could. Only when I was far enough did a sharp sting pulse through my left hand, making me realize what had just happened. "Balerion, you bastard! You nearly got us killed." Meanwhile, Uriel continued examining students, but she couldn't shake off the memory of that boy. Fry Starlight. Unlike the others, she had felt something blocking her power from penetrating his body. It had never happened before, which was why, for a brief moment, she had panicked. Fortunately, the resistance didn't last long and quickly faded away. She smirked playfully as she resumed her examinations. This year's first years aren't simple. After that bizarre examination, I immediately returned to my room. I frantically powered on my computer, unable to bear the uncertainty any longer. A quick glance at my points. Achievement points, 95/50. I was so close. So, damn, close. But at this point, I had no choice. I was at a dead end. My doubts were scattered, and I couldn't afford any more uncertainties. I needed proof, and this damn system was my only lead. Ignoring the author's advice, I decided to use an ability I had never touched before. Image, a glimpse into the future. By spending achievement points, the author could receive a single image of an event that would happen in one of the paths affecting them. The farther the event, the higher the cost. This was my lifeline. 2 days remained before the raid. So, I set the date precisely 2 days into the future. A notification popped up. Snapshot of the future. Date: January 17th, 2428. Cost 300 achievement points. Damn it! Even though the event was so close, the price was still steep. But despite everything, I agreed. I no longer had the freedom to refuse. The moment I made my decision, a sharp wave of pain struck my mind, forcing me to my knees as I clutched my head in agony. What's happening now? My reality turned upside down as the desk, the walls, and everything around me melted away. Colors blended together, forming a new image before me. Slowly but steadily, I fought with all my might to focus, unwilling to miss a single detail. And within seconds, my eyes snapped open. The scene before me, I was looking down from the sky. From this vantage point, I could see the entire temple, or rather, what was left of it. What I was witnessing was horrifying. Over half of the temple's grounds had been destroyed, and bodies, torn limbs, and shattered remains were scattered everywhere. Some of those bodies belonged to the main characters, making my heart race in a frenzy. Before I could process the devastation and bloodshed, I was yanked back into reality. I gasped for air, struggling to comprehend what had just happened. The temple had fallen. The main characters were dead. Events that were never supposed to happen in the original story had unfolded. I shot to my feet, frantically typing on my computer. This wasn't what I wanted. This time I adjusted the time and reset the clock, praying I was right, praying I would get the outcome I sought. Achievement points required 300. It felt as if those points were carved directly from my flesh, but I accepted the cost, bracing myself for the shock. Please, just give me what I want. Unlike before, reality itself dissolved once again, reshaping into a new vision before my eyes. This time, I saw the temple students engaged in battle against a group of strangers, most of them clad in black. The image displayed every member of the elite class, fighting with all their might. I found myself focusing so intensely on the details that my eyes felt like they might pop out of their sockets. At first, my heart sank. I couldn't see anything unusual, but upon a second closer look, I realized something crucial that I had missed. And just like that, the vision faded, pulling me back to the present. I sat there, staring blankly into space, before a strained smile stretched across my face. So, it was you. Chapter 66. The nightmare begins. Time passed quickly. The temple had finally gotten a chance to breathe. Thanks to the combined efforts of the church and the temple's forces, all the contractors had been suppressed. This entire event was something worth celebrating. Thus, the students gathered in the temple's vast courtyard, their gazes fixed on the platform before them. Seated in her chair, Sophia Tan let out a sigh of relief as a few words slipped from her lips. Finally, this madness is over. Noticing her relaxed posture, a woman seated beside her playfully tapped her shoulder. Why the frown, little Sophia? If you keep that up, you'll get wrinkles like me. Sophia smiled at the lady next to her. I wouldn't say that. You've still managed to keep your beauty, Lady Cynthia. Ho ho, flattery won't get you anywhere, dear. I know time has long left me behind. Beside Sophia sat that kind old woman with white hair and gentle blue eyes. Her former teacher, the person she would always be indebted to, Cynthia Adams. Perhaps now we can finally catch our breath. I doubt it, my dear. Cynthia lowered her gaze slightly, a small smile forming on her lips. A war looms on the horizon, and an enemy we know little about lurks in the shadows. We won't be resting anytime soon. Reality could be bitter sometimes, but Sophia tried to accept it with an open heart. At the very least, let's keep it away from the next generation for as long as possible. Hearing her former student's words, the elderly woman smiled warmly. Well said. At the very least, we can protect these young sprouts for a while. The two women continued their conversation, but before long, their attention shifted to the man who stepped onto the platform. With Headmaster Bloodmater absent, it was only natural that his deputy would take charge. The man was in his mid-40s, with black hair, sharp features, and a pair of glasses that suited his face effortlessly. He wore a sleek black suit over his perfectly built physique. With his hands clasped behind his back, he walked with the composure of a king, standing tall before the gathered students and faculty. He was none other than the deputy headmaster and one of the temple's 5 strongest figures, Beck Ryan, a being ranked S+. His piercing gaze swept across the crowd before he spoke in a deep voice. To the students of the temple and my fellow colleagues, first and foremost, I wish to extend my sincerest apologies. As they watched the deputy bow his head before them, the students were stunned. For someone as powerful as him to lower his head to them, it left them speechless. But he didn't dwell on it for long. He straightened up and continued his speech. Our duty has always been to support the next generation, to provide them with an environment where they can grow and be protected, and we failed in that duty when our students perished before our very eyes. But just as we fell together, we shall rise together. Though this will never atone for the lives lost, we have successfully suppressed the traitors and reclaimed the temple's honor. Beck Ryan bowed slightly once more, his expression firm. The future now lies before you. The torch will be passed to you, our precious gems. Here you will be honed to face whatever the days ahead may bring. But at the very least, from me to every staff member of this temple, know that we will support you with everything we have. Let us decide our destiny, together. As his speech concluded, a wave of applause erupted from the audience. His warm demeanor was a stark contrast to the ruthless Bloodmater, which only made the students even more grateful. Among them, Cynthia and Sophia clapped along. The elderly woman gave a small nod. I couldn't have done better myself. Beside her, Sophia smiled. He's still as skilled with words as ever. Amidst the applause, few paid attention to the man making his way toward Beck Ryan. Clap, clap. Hearing the sound behind him, the deputy headmaster slowly turned. There, approaching him, was a refined man with neatly styled brown hair and piercing red eyes, dressed in a sophisticated suit. Well said, Beck. I'm touched. Beck Ryan's brows furrowed as he recognized the familiar face. Kai Lutz? What are you doing? Kai Luke ignored the question, standing before him as an equal, in full view of everyone. Let's face the future together. Such beautiful, inspiring words. With a strange smile, Kai Luke placed a hand on the puzzled deputy's shoulder. I wish you the best of luck in all your battles and wars to come. Suddenly, his smile vanished, and even Beck Ryan felt that something was terribly wrong. The other instructors were just as bewildered by Kai Luke's sudden approach. It wasn't planned. But his next words sent a powerful shockwave through them all as an eerie light engulfed the deputy's body. That war begins now. Before the eyes of hundreds, no thousands, watching from below, Beck Ryan vanished without a trace. In that moment, most of the instructors had already begun to act, realizing something was amiss. Yet, Kai Luke stood there, unbothered. As the sun dipped below the horizon, he spread his arms wide. A strange circle formed beneath his feet, expanding outward, releasing an unseen force that pushed the approaching instructors back. Sophia's expression darkened as she sensed the sheer power within that formation. When did he manage to prepare something like this? At last, the circle stopped, covering the entire temple courtyard. A blinding red light erupted from it, and Kai Luke's smile only grew wider, standing there with his arms spread wide. His voice echoed through the air, reaching every ear. Let the show begin. At that moment, from within the glowing circle, figures emerged. Dozens, no hundreds, materializing from nothingness. All were clad in black, and some radiated an overwhelming pressure that sent waves of terror rippling through the crowd. Then, without warning, blades flashed, spears were raised, projectiles streaked through the air. It was an overwhelming display of power. And in the blink of an eye, a student's head rolled across the ground. That was all it took for panic to explode. Cynthia's voice rang out in sheer desperation, her urgent cry cutting through the chaos. Protect the students. But it was futile. One fell, then another, then a third. In mere moments, dozens of lifeless bodies littered the once peaceful courtyard, painting it a deep, horrific red. The instructors moved swiftly, but they were met with fierce resistance, each one intercepted by an enemy of equal strength. A deafening battle erupted, one that shook the very foundations of the temple. And high above, watching from his elevated vantage point, one man smiled in satisfaction. Finally, it has begun. Far from the temple, beyond the borders of the empire itself, a figure appeared out of thin air. Beck Ryan, the deputy headmaster, staggered slightly as he tried to process what had just happened. Moments ago, he had stood within the temple. Now he was here, but there was no time to think. Shadows moved. Dozens of figures lunged at him from all directions. His eyes flickered with cold fury. A deafening crack tore through the air as a bolt of lightning erupted from his body, turning his attackers to dust in an instant. Bathed in a radiant blue aura, serpents of electricity coiled around Beck Ryan as his expression darkened. Kailut, the temple's grand sorcerer, that traitor. He cast a sharp glance around, assessing his surroundings. Vast plains stretched in every direction, and in the distance, an ominous black fortress loomed on the horizon. Where the hell am I? Just as he was about to move. Traitor, what a complicated word you use. Beck Ryan whirled around, alarm flashing through his gaze. He hadn't sensed the approach at all. The figure continued walking toward him, utterly unhurried, his voice carrying the weight of inevitability. Tell me, you who call yourselves true humans and brand the rest as traitors, I wonder, what kind of expression will you show? Beck Ryan's heart pounded. The electric serpents around him crackled violently as he finally recognized the man before him. Dressed in a sharp military-style suit, a long black coat billowing behind him in the wind, sleek black hair swept to the side, a face devoid of emotion, and, most chilling of all, those merciless, unfathomable eyes. He knew exactly who this was, and when he saw the sword strapped to the man's waist, his hands clenched into fists. Unbothered by his opponent's tension, the man continued his slow approach, fingers closing around his weapon's hilt. A strange sound, like the rattling of distant chains, echoed through the air as he drew his blade. A translucent, ethereal glow coiled around the weapon, pulsating with an eerie presence. Human, demon, traitor. In the end, you all wear the same face. Beck Ryan moved. A devastating surge of lightning tore through the sky, roaring toward his foe with the full, unchecked power of an S+ awakened. The entire landscape was bathed in blinding light, but the man merely raised his sword. With a single, effortless swing, the lightning strike vanished, the force behind it erased. Calmly, as if nothing had happened, he sheathed his sword once more. And then, as if Beck Ryan no longer existed in his world, he turned and walked away. In the end, you all show the same expression when I cut you down. Behind him, the brilliant lightning strike, the air itself. Beck Ryan, one of the strongest beings in the world. Everything had been severed in two. His story ended in silence. The sword at the man's waist pulsed as if hungering for more, but its wielder paid it no mind. Without looking back, he continued toward the looming fortress in the distance. The Lord's castle. Gavid Lindman, the Duke of Hell, bearer of the blade known as Ether. And with his return, the nightmare began. Chapter 67, Fierce Battles 1. The stench of blood thickened the air, saturating the temple grounds as severed limbs fell one after another. Ah! Isn't this magnificent? Atop an elevated platform, his own private theater of carnage, stood Kai Luke, Grand Mage of the Temple. He paid no mind to the massacre unfolding below. Instead, he idly toyed with his watch, completely detached from the horror beneath him. The north is secured. The south as well. The east is ready. The west is complete. One report after another reached his ears, each one widening his grin. Well done, my dear students. Now, let the world marvel at your magic. As if in response to his words, dozens of crimson magic circles flared to life across the temple grounds. Black-cloaked figures emerged from their glowing cores, flooding the battlefield in droves. Among them, nightmare creatures slithered forth, twisted abominations that had no place in the waking world. Nowhere within the temple was safe. Destruction was absolute. Below, the professors fought with unyielding resolve. The elderly Cynthia Adams manipulated her aura, a ring of water forming around her. Water dragon. A massive torrent surged forward, taking the shape of a raging eastern dragon that obliterated everything in its path. From the very start, Cynthia had carved through the enemy lines, her eyes locked onto the man above, the one orchestrating this nightmare. Then, a sudden ambush from behind. Before it could strike, fierce blue flames erupted, intercepting the attack in an instant. Alexander Fleming had arrived, standing beside the remaining temple professors. Their combined strength, high-tier awakeners, surpassing A-class, crushed the invading forces with overwhelming force. Go! We'll handle this. The professors threw themselves into battle, clearing a path for Cynthia. She did not hesitate. With a surge of blue aura, she vanished, reappearing in an instant, above Kai Luke. He lazily lifted his gaze, meeting her furious glare as she raised both hands toward him. Dozens of celestial spheres, forged from water, materialized around her before launching a barrage of high-speed projectiles straight at him. Kai Luke smirked. With a snap of his fingers, the projectiles froze mid-air, then vanished, as if they had never existed. So it's you, Cynthia? Do you wish to join the festivities as well? Her fists clenched, and the celestial spheres expanded, growing into massive planetary bodies orbiting her like a furious constellation. Tell me, Kai, how long? How long have you been planning this? And why? There's no need for this pointless exchange. We'll never see eye to eye. He extended a hand toward her. Instead, why don't you join me in this dance? Her celestial spheres blazed, unleashing a relentless storm of attacks. Just die already. Explosions shattered the platform, reducing it to rubble. But Kai Luke was nowhere to be seen. Do you really think you can do anything against me now, Cynthia? His voice slithered from behind her. She reacted instantly, hurling her celestial spheres at him. But they never touched him. Kai Luke flickered in and out of existence, vanishing and reappearing, his voice drifting from all directions. Let me teach you a lesson or two about mages. Unlike you, who fight blindly, we mages strategize every move. His tone remained calm, almost instructional, as if he were lecturing his students, utterly unbothered by her attacks. As you see, Cynthia, a mage's battlefield is everything. Without preparation, we've always been at a disadvantage. He paused, his golden eyes gleaming. So tell me, how many days do you think I spent preparing this place? How many months? How many years? My entire life has been for this day alone. So bear witness to my struggle, Cynthia. Her expression darkened. Then suddenly, countless magic circles erupted across the temple grounds, spreading outward like ripples breaking the surface of a still lake. Pre-prepared spells, hundreds of them, now covered the temple, an overwhelming monument to his power. The entire temple is my domain. His words resonated, and in response, blazing fireballs emerged from the void, raining down towards Cynthia. She barely had time to react, forming a water barrier to shield herself. But that was only the beginning. Lightning, wind, fire, stone projectiles, celestial orbs, serpents of water. A relentless barrage of destruction closed in on her. You are within my domain, and in this domain, I can do anything. And right now, I want to see your blood. For a fleeting moment, despair flickered in Cynthia's eyes as the onslaught closed in. But just before impact, a violent cyclone erupted, scattering the attacks and shielding her. Beside her, a young woman stood firm, defiant. Come to your senses, Lady Cynthia. Sophia Tan had arrived. Hundreds of wind-forged blades floated around her before launching straight at Kai Luke. You were the one who taught me never to give up, no matter what. What am I supposed to do if I see you like this? Cynthia. Kai Luke effortlessly nullified her attacks, but she did not stop. Cynthia exhaled, then stepped beside her former student. Who said I gave up? I haven't even started yet. Kai Luke chuckled, amusement flickering in his gaze. To be faced with Sophia Tan, the temple's miracle, and behind her, one of its oldest professors, Cynthia Adams, it only made him more entertained. Now this is getting fun. As the main battlefield raged on, attacks erupted across various parts of the temple. More and more invaders emerged, spreading chaos like wildfire and turning the conflict into an all-out war. Amidst the carnage, a lone figure stood calmly, watching in silence. Behind him loomed a colossal man, at least 3 times his height, a walking mountain of flesh and steel. The first figure wore a white mask, smeared with blood. His clouded eyes scanned the battlefield with an eerily detached gaze. Then, a voice, cold and void of emotion, slipped from beneath the mask. "Go!" At that single command, a wicked grin spread across the giant's face. With a swift motion, he cast aside his cloak, unveiling a massive, hulking physique. His face was framed by a thick, wild beard that cascaded down his chin. His body was a fusion of muscle and fat, his head completely shaved, with 2 monstrous battle axes strapped to his back. Then he roared. A thunderous war cry tore through the air as he charged forward like an unstoppable juggernaut. The students barely had time to react before he tore through them, his axes carving a bloody path. One moment they were running. The next, a rampaging behemoth had cleaved through their ranks, an axe in each hand. His gigantic blades reaped through bodies, grinding flesh into pulp, drenching him in a crimson deluge. The horror was too much to bear. Some students collapsed, others wet themselves, their young minds shattered by the gruesome spectacle before them. It was only natural. They were too young. None of them had ever witnessed true slaughter. And then more appeared. Across the battlefield, other axe-wielding monstrosities emerged, turning the temple into a living nightmare. Students fled like insects, scrambling toward the temple gates in a desperate bid for escape. Salvation was so close, yet the moment their feet nearly touched safety, they slammed into an invisible wall. Screams ripped through the air as students piled against the unseen barrier, clawing at it in sheer panic. "What's happening? Why can't we get out?" Some lashed out, unleashing barrage after barrage of attacks against the invisible prison. Magic projectiles collided with its surface, but not a single scratch formed. None of them could think clearly. None of them had the luxury of rational thought in their desperation. But unlike them, one of the temple guards stood frozen, his wide, terror-stricken eyes locked onto the sky, a realization far more horrifying than the massacre had dawned upon him. He murmured through his dry lips, "The celestial dome, the barrier that had always been the temple's pride, the one strong enough to withstand attacks from S-rank awakened. Impossible!" Despair crept in as the truth dawned upon them. The very shield meant to protect them from external threats had somehow become their prison. How? When? No one knew. Like fish trapped in a glass tank, the students found themselves caged, waiting to be slaughtered. Behind them, the axe-wielding giant let out a booming laugh. "Ah, you poor, miserable souls." Veins bulged over his colossal frame as a red glow pulsed across his weapons. "Let me end your suffering." The ground shattered beneath him as he swung, erasing dozens in a single blow. In an instant, the temple, once hailed as the safest place of all, had become something far worse than hell. Chapter 68. Fierce Battles. 2. Inside the elite quarters, Lara Croft raced through the corridors, clutching her sleek blue bow, her nerves taut as a bowstring. She reached the training grounds, her gaze locking onto the one person she sought. Snow! Drenched in sweat, he turned toward her, golden eyes ablaze. What's going on? The one who had remained isolated until now listened as she rushed through the details. His expression darkened with every word. As they made their way outside, they ran into Saris Moonlight, who happened to be nearby. The 3 moved together. All the while, Snow remained silent, while Saris contemplated their next move. "We need to regroup with the others first." Lara quickly nodded at Saris' words. But before they could take another step, a wave of black-masked figures materialized, weapons drawn. Both girls tensed, preparing for battle. Yet, their eyes involuntarily drifted to the one standing beside them. The erupting aura from his body was overwhelming. Snow lifted his head, golden energy crackling like lightning in his gaze. "So, you've finally shown yourselves." With a flicker of movement, his sword left its sheath. A devastating shockwave erupted, rippling through the air. In an instant, Snow appeared behind the dozens who had lunged at him, his blade bathed in a swirling storm of colors. Behind him, the masked figures dissolved into crimson mist, their bodies erased so thoroughly that not even corpses remained. Even his allies were shaken by the sheer ferocity of his killing intent. He did not hesitate. He did not care for strategy. With a single step, his foot shattered the ground, and he ripped through the enemy ranks like a force of nature, leaving only carnage in his wake. "Snow!" Lara shouted, attempting to chase after him, but Saris caught her wrist. "Wait!" "But—" Saris shook her head. "We should follow from a distance. It's too dangerous to get close to him right now." Lara bit her lip but couldn't argue. She had never seen him like this before, never felt such an overwhelming bloodlust. Away from Snow, who had torn through everything in his path, the temple finally seemed to breathe again as students from both the elite and abyss classes stormed onto the battlefield. The elites, led by Ellen White and several key figures from major families, were formidable, some even strong enough to rival the temple's instructors. Especially Ellen, who had slain dozens with nothing more than a few words. Meanwhile, chaos erupted among the invaders as a figure moved like a shadow through their ranks, too fast for the eye to track. By the time they realized what had happened, their throats had already been slit. Atlas Umbra, the eldest son of Mist. His presence alone helped tip the scales, if only slightly. But that was true everywhere, except in the temple's grand courtyard. There, a group of instructors had rallied to take on Kai Luke. The result? A massacre. Sophia's vision blurred as blood trickled down her face, staining her once pristine features. She looked almost ethereal now, like a fallen angel, broken and wounded. The others were in no better condition. Some had lost limbs, while others had already succumbed to death. Cynthia clenched her teeth, her gaze locking onto the man floating above them. Just how long did it take him to prepare all of this? Whether it was her or the other instructors, they were all paralyzed by the sheer scale of the spells amassed against them. Thousands, perhaps even more. Right now, Kai Luke stood on the verge of SS rank, despite being only an S-rank mage. And yet, he merely chuckled, meeting their horrified stares with amusement. "Why are you looking at me like that?" Shocked. With a single clap, hundreds of fiery spears materialized around him. The bond between student and teacher, your precious camaraderie. Did you fools actually believe you could defeat me with that nonsense? The power of friendship. Flames rained down like judgment, consuming everything in their path. He was so at ease that he obliterated the students in the courtyard as if they were nothing more than collateral damage. Even his own allies weren't spared. Amidst this carnage, he remained in complete control. Watching the instructors struggle, he unleashed an endless barrage of attacks, never giving them a moment to recover. "Look at you. I haven't even activated my contract yet, and you're already at your limit." At last, boredom flickered across his face. It was time to end this. He raised a finger, his next target clear, Sophia. A pre-charged lightning spell crackled before him before launching forward like a blinding lance of destruction. Sophia! She had been so focused on fending off the relentless bombardment that her wind barriers failed to block the cunning strike that followed. For a fleeting moment, Sophia thought it was over. But to her shock, that old woman appeared before her. "Ha!" A gasp escaped Sophia's lips as warm blood splattered across her face. Blood that wasn't hers. Cynthia smiled weakly as she collapsed onto her former student, a gaping hole the size of a fist carved into her chest. "Lady Cynthia." "No." Sophia clung to her old mentor desperately, but Cynthia only let out a faint chuckle. "You know, Sophia, back when I said we had to protect the next generation." "Don't speak. We need to stop the bleeding." Cynthia could no longer hear her. She was barely holding on, mustering what little strength remained to say her final words. "In the end, you're still my student, which means it's my duty to protect you." The light faded from Cynthia's eyes, leaving Sophia frozen in place, unable to process what had just happened. Above them, Tai Luke watched with a smirk. How touching. Elsewhere, the axe-bearer had finished his brutal work, trampling over the corpses that littered the ground. He scowled as he crushed a student's skull beneath his boot. How dull. His gaze swept over his subordinates before he suddenly barked. Hey you! How's the setup for the second teleportation circle? The black-cloaked figures flinched at his voice, scrambling to respond. Everything is proceeding smoothly, sir. But there's been a slight delay. A delay! His voice carried a dangerous edge, sending a shiver through the others as they rushed to explain. Why yes, sir. A white-haired young man appeared. He's already cut down a lot of our forces. For a moment, silence. Then, a grin stretched across the axe-bearer's face, wide, almost manic. His entire body trembled with excitement. Where is he? Chapter 69. The Masked Man. Snow Lionheart POV. I slowly ran my tongue over my parched lips, swallowing hard in a futile attempt to suppress the strange thirst creeping over me. The heat of fresh blood seared against my bare skin, sharpening my senses, forcing me to experience every moment with vivid clarity. Of course, the blood wasn't mine. I was surrounded, dozens of enemies closing in from all sides. Yet I didn't even bother to look at their faces. At this point, none of it mattered. I no longer cared. I simply cut, killed, and shattered anything that entered my range, moving purely on battle instincts honed to their limit. A part of me desperately wanted this madness to end. But my thirst for blood and vengeance burned far hotter. So, I pressed forward, carving my path through a sea of corpses. It was a relentless cycle. Many tried to stop me, throwing everything they had in my way. But it was meaningless. I thought it would go on like this until the very end, until something finally forced me to halt. I never saw it coming. Something was hurled at me from a distance, obliterating the ground where I had stood just moments ago. As the dust settled, my gaze locked onto a massive battle axe, embedded deep in the earth. It had traveled an unnatural distance, only to land perfectly in the hand of a hulking figure. So, you're the anomaly they've been talking about. The axe-wielder grinned, flashing a row of golden teeth, then raised his weapon toward me, his voice booming with pride. The name's Shane. Face me and... Perhaps he had been about to declare a challenge. But he never got the chance. The edge of my blade flashed before his face, forcing him to raise his axe in defense. Metal clashed against metal, sending a burst of fiery sparks into the air. Get out of my way. He blocked the first strike, so I followed up with a second, then a third, then dozens more, each slash targeting his massive frame. Unfortunately, he deflected every one, countering with his own devastating swings. Ha! Why the rush? Stay a while. Let's enjoy this. Veins bulged along Shane's arms as he swung his axe with terrifying speed, the sheer force behind each strike shaking the battlefield. But in the midst of his onslaught, his eyes suddenly widened in shock. He had failed to land a single hit. Worse, his defenses had been completely breached. And now, I stood before him, sword crackling with serpentine bolts of lightning. The aura surged violently through my body, condensing the electricity around my blade until it darkened into an ominous black. I threw my full weight into my next strike, feeling my sword pierce through flesh, sending a spray of blood into the air. Landing behind him, I barely dodged his desperate counterattack, then glanced at my blade, now coated in his blood. Lifting my gaze, I met his. A deep wound stretched across his abdomen, but he was still standing. His sheer bulk had worked in his favor. Even though I had cut deep, I had barely inflicted any real damage. Your fat saved you. Sensing danger, he roared as an enormous surge of energy flooded into his axes. Don't push your luck, kid. His arms swelled to twice their size as he lunged. You're nothing but meat to test the sharpness of my axe. Watching the oversized boar charge at me, I slammed my foot into the ground, bracing for impact. King of War form. A faint glow flickered across my body, barely noticeable at first, before intricate violet runes surfaced along my skin. I swung my blade, unleashing wave after wave of black lightning. He was stronger than me, but I was the superior fighter. Seconds later, his arm was severed. As his severed limb flew through the air, he let out a furious roar, launching a final, desperate strike. His axe came crashing down, shattering the earth into dozens of jagged shards. But his last stand amounted to nothing. His attack never reached me. Instead, all he saw was a wave of azure flames engulfing his axe, reducing it to cinders. Then my blade tore through him, carving a gash from shoulder to stomach, nearly splitting him in two. "This time your fat didn't save you." He said nothing, only collapsed into a pool of his own blood as the very debris he had sent flying moments ago rained down, burying him beneath the rubble. The runes on my body faded. I no longer needed King of War form. My gaze swept across the battlefield, searching for my next opponent. I needed more. This wasn't enough to quench the fire raging inside me. I turned to leave, then I froze. Slowly, I turned back toward the place where Shane had been buried. My grip tightened around my sword as a chilling sense of foreboding crept over me. I didn't know why. I didn't know how. But there, standing amidst the wreckage, was a man. A stranger. A blood-stained white mask concealed his face, his gaze fixed on the pile of rubble. "You defeated Shane." His cold voice echoed from behind the mask as he placed a hand on the wreckage. And with ease, too. I couldn't tell if he was speaking to me, himself, or mourning his fallen comrade. I didn't know. His mask made it impossible to read him. But none of that mattered. His last words meant only one thing. He was my enemy. The masked man turned his head slowly, the flickering blue flames of my attack dancing in his crimson eyes, glowing ominously behind his mask. The fire devoured his fallen comrade's grave, reducing it to ashes. Yet he was nowhere to be seen. "This level of power, in your first year here." His voice shifted, now coming from my side. He lifted the edge of his black cloak, revealing a sword strapped to his waist. Then, drawing it ever so slowly, he muttered darkly, "You must die." I didn't give him the chance to gain the upper hand. I struck first. But before my blade could reach him, he simply continued what he was doing, completely unfazed. "Reveal yourself, Moonlight Sword." Took less than a second. That was all he needed to parry my attack completely. And for the first time I felt it. The sheer, suffocating presence of his blade. A sword bathed in an eerie, gray glow, radiating a sinister aura that sent a chill down my spine. Just what kind of weapon was this? The masked man answered me, not with words, but through action. In an instant, the ominous light from his sword consumed my flames entirely, swallowing them whole. And in the next moment, a crack split across my blade. This is bad. Chapter 70. Despair. Amidst the temple's battlefield, it was the most violent battleground, hosting the strongest individuals within the temple. Compared to what was happening there, the other locations felt like mere child's play. Amid the raging flames and relentless bombardment, Sophia sat cradling the body of her former mentor, Cynthia. She desperately tried to make her swallow a healing potion, hoping to bring her back. With vacant eyes, she continued to feel the coldness seeping from Cynthia's body as they both lay submerged in a pool of blood. "Snap out of it, Sophia." While she was preoccupied with trying to heal her mentor, the other instructors were still engaged in battle against Kai Luke. Though calling it a battle was a stretch, Kai Luke was simply bombarding them with pre-prepared magical spells. "She's gone. Leave her and focus on what's in front of us." Alexander Fleming struggled through the blazing blue flames, attempting to break through Kai Luke's relentless attacks, but he barely managed to move a few meters forward. "Damn it!" he cursed, drenched in blood and sweat, frustrated by the situation. If only Director Bloodmater or Lady Melina were here, this wouldn't be happening. Indeed, the temple was missing its strongest weapons. But time waited for no one. "Tell me, what do you hope to achieve with this pathetic resistance?" Completely unscathed, The sorcerer loomed over them, surrounded by countless magical circles. Perhaps you're stalling for time? Hoping reinforcements will arrive soon. Most of the instructors grimaced, realizing their plan had been exposed. Seeing their reaction, Kai Luke burst into hysterical laughter. Do you really think you stand a chance? As long as we're here, anything is possible. Oh, is that so? Kai Luke brought his hands together, forming a circle, much larger than the ones before. The amount of aura he gathered was anything but insignificant. Allow me to shatter your foolish illusions. Slowly, a massive meteor formed behind him. Raising a single finger, he continued, Previously, the first teleportation circle scattered my comrades across different areas of the temple, an initial wave, so to speak. The fiery meteor behind him continued growing at an alarming rate. Meanwhile, the instructors remained pinned down, unable to act under his continuous bombardment. Even amidst the chaos, his voice rang clear as he raised a second finger. Although I've spent years preparing for this, I must admit, a circle of this scale does take some time to activate. As realization dawned upon them, despair and disbelief finally took hold of the instructors' faces. Lutz, you! That's right, there's a second teleportation circle. With a smug grin, he spread his arms wide. One that will engulf the entire temple. Once activated, the real forces of the Ultras will descend. Thousands of bloodthirsty warriors. Everyone's faces darkened at his declaration. It meant only one thing. Ha ha ha. Yes. Your attempt to stall for time was the most foolish decision you could have made. All you've done is delay your inevitable deaths. An entire army will appear here? Finally, the last of their resistance crumbled as the weight of the impending disaster settled in. If Kai Luke's words were true, then they stood no chance. If just a few hundred invaders could cause this much destruction, what would happen when thousands arrived? The Grand Sorcerer relished in their despair. He nodded in satisfaction before clapping his hands. Let's put an end to these pitiful souls. By now, the fiery meteor had grown large enough to blanket the entire battlefield. Faced with its overwhelming might, the instructors stood frozen, powerless against their impending doom. It loomed closer and closer, swallowing everything in its path. The entire temple shook as the colossal meteor crashed into the ground, its impact sending tremors far and wide, leaving onlookers in shock. Alexander Fleming shut his eyes tightly, as did the other instructors, resigning themselves to their fate. But the end never came. Slowly, he opened his eyes, only to be blinded by a brilliant golden light encircling him and the rest of the instructors. Kai Luke frowned, confused by what had just happened. Then he got his answer. Before him stood a dark-skinned man, one hand resting behind his back while the other firmly gripped an ancient staff he had wielded countless times before. His eyes, now fully closed, locked onto the sorcerer as he spoke with unwavering resolve. It's far too soon to surrender. If you do, how can you expect the students to keep fighting? Raising his staff, he declared, Here and now, let's end this. For the first time, the smirk vanished from Kai Luke's face. Chupo Moting, what are you doing here? What happened at the arena? Of course, the dark-skinned man was none other than Chupo Moting. He was second only to the vice director in terms of who needed to be eliminated immediately. Of all places, the arena had been where the enemy's strongest forces were sent. 4 S-class awakened warriors. All for the sake of taking down a single man. Yet somehow that very man now stood before him. As if answering his unspoken question, Chupo Moting calmly stated, Naturally they fell. In an instant he appeared before Kai Luke like a phantom. And so will you. His fist was about to connect with Kai Luke's face, but the sorcerer vanished just in time. He reappeared a distance away, sending volleys of fire and lightning toward Chupo, but they were effortlessly deflected by his staff. Once again, Chupo closed the distance. Kai Luke had no idea what was happening. The battlefield had been laced with his spells. In terms of raw power, he was far above his opponent, an S+ rank. Yet, no matter what he threw at him, Chupo blocked everything with the golden aura surrounding his body. Kai Luke attempted to teleport again, but before he could, stone hands emerged from the ground, grabbing onto his legs. He shattered them with ease, but that brief delay proved costly. Chupo was now right in front of him. As a sorcerer, Kai Luke was hopeless in close combat, whereas his opponent was a master of martial arts. One punch was all it took. Kai Luke's head twisted at an unnatural angle as his body was sent flying. But Chupo didn't stop there. With a few gestures, massive stone hands formed, slamming into the sorcerer's body and burying him deep within the earth. The battlefield fell silent as everyone stared at Chupo moting, their mouths hanging open in utter disbelief. In just a few minutes, Chupo had accomplished what no one else could. He had taken down the sorcerer who had been fighting within his own domain. But the battle was far from over. Everyone realized this the moment they saw the black aura lines slowly rising from the spot where the sorcerer had been buried. From amidst the ruins, Kai Luke emerged once more, standing on his feet. His head was tilted backward at an unnatural angle, but with an eerie snap, it realigned itself. Dark markings spread across his entire body, accompanied by strange, scattered symbols. His expression was now far more complicated. An unexpected variable had disrupted his carefully laid plans. He still didn't fully grasp how Chupo had managed to block his attacks so effectively, nor did he understand the strange light that had continuously repelled his spells. But their last clash had revealed everything to him. I see now, Chupo. The one I should have dealt with first wasn't Beck Ryan. It was you. The pressure around the sorcerer surged drastically, pushing him closer to the realm of an SS class. From the very beginning, it should have been impossible for an S+ rank like Chupo Moting to suppress him like this. But the secret didn't lie in Chupo himself. It lay in what he wielded. Kai Luke pointed at the golden staff in Chupo's grasp, a smirk forming on his lips. That staff. So it was in your possession all along. The Dawn Guard. A subtle shift crossed Chupo's otherwise calm expression at the mention of his weapon. But ultimately it changed nothing. Kai Luke had become deadly serious now, fully aware that eliminating his opponent was a necessity. He had no choice but to unleash the power he had obtained from the demons. On the other hand, Chupo knew exactly what had to be done. Golden light from the Dawn Guard enveloped him as he prepared for battle. As the two warriors stood on the brink of unleashing everything they had, far from the battlefield, the traitor was about to make his move. Chapter 71. Unveiling the Truth 1. As the temple invasion unfolded and Kai Luke made his move, a fateful encounter was taking place elsewhere within the temple. In a secluded chamber, far from prying eyes, a girl with golden hair lay motionless on a hospital-like bed. Thin, thread-like wires clung to her body, pulsing faintly as they absorbed wisps of dark vapor rising intermittently from her skin. The only thing covering her was a light white gown, barely shielding her from the cold air. Minutes passed, and finally the process reached its end. Sansa Valerian's eyes fluttered open. By now, she had grown accustomed to the sterile scent of medical instruments and the suffocating atmosphere that surrounded her. You did well, Lady Sansa. A voice broke the silence. Beside her bed stood a peculiar woman. Her gray hair, gaunt frame, and dark circles under her eyes gave her a ghostly appearance. Thank you, Estrelda. I always trouble you with this. Estrelda, as the woman was apparently called, shook her head lazily before beginning to detach the wires and strange instruments from Sansa's body. Today's extraction was larger than usual. Could it be that your memories are finally returning? Sansa raised a hand to her head, fingers tracing the curve of her skull, as if searching for an answer. I don't know. Estrelda paused briefly before resuming her work. I expected either a yes or a no. Sansa clenched her fists slightly, hesitating before she spoke. Lately, I've been having nightmares. Nightmares? She nodded. Nightmares of when I was kidnapped. That cold, damp cell, watching people lose their humanity one after another. I remember it all so clearly. But sometimes, fragments of something else slip through, like fleeting images. Estrelda listened intently, never interrupting, absorbing every word. For some reason, Sansa seemed to struggle with what she wanted to say next. I remember a blinding light every time I opened my eyes, shadows of masked figures in black surrounding me, while I lay on a table. She tried to recall more, but a sharp pain stabbed through her skull, forcing her to clutch her head with both hands. Estrelda placed a reassuring hand on her shoulder. That's enough for today. Don't force it. The memories will come back when they're ready. Sansa exhaled, nodding slowly. Estrelda offered a rare smile, though on her cadaverous face, it looked more unsettling than comforting. That concludes today's session. You're free to leave. Finally, Sansa rose from the bed. After a quick bath and a change of clothes, she made her way toward the exit. I'll see you next week. Estrelda barely acknowledged the farewell, waving a hand dismissively as she was already deep in thought, analyzing today's results. Understanding this, Sansa left quietly. The moment she stepped outside, two figures materialized from the shadows. A young man with blonde hair and a young woman with dark hair, a faint scar beneath her left eye. Both wore the temple's uniform. Dito, Ili. The two immediately dropped to one knee, but Sansa motioned for them to stand. I've told you before, there's no need to follow me everywhere. You can return now. The two were clearly older than her, final-year trainees to be precise. Yet despite the 5-year age gap, they treated her with unwavering respect. Apologies, Lady Sansa, but we cannot comply. It is our duty to protect you at all times within the temple. They spoke in perfect synchronization, making it clear that arguing would be pointless. Sansa sighed, resigning herself to their persistence. Fine, do as you please. I'm going back to my room. As you command. In an instant, the two vanished. But anyone with half a brain would know they were still nearby, watching her every move. Sansa walked absent-mindedly, lost in thought. Her weekly sessions had remained a secret, known only to her father, Estrelda, and the temple's director. This had been her reality since she was rescued nearly a year ago. For all this time, she had been searching for answers. What truly happened to her? Why did she lose her memories? What was the nature of the power she awakened afterward? None of these mysteries had an answer yet. Engrossed in her thoughts, she hadn't even realized she was already standing in front of her room. Oh! Letting out a quiet sigh, she reached for the door. But just as she was about to step inside, her eyes caught something unusual. An envelope. A single white envelope lay on the ground before her door. She hesitated for a moment before picking it up. A letter. Beneath it rested a strange black rose. It scent thick and unfamiliar, carrying an intoxicating fragrance. Curiosity stirred within her. She was about to open the envelope, but a voice from behind stopped her. Don't, princess. It could be dangerous. As expected, her bodyguards were still watching. Ignoring them, Sansa unfolded the letter without hesitation. I'm a wave controller, remember? At the very least, I know how to judge these things. The moment she opened it, a peculiar fragrance wafted into the air. Inside, she found a single black sheet of paper, its words scrawled in crimson ink. Dear Sansa, you cannot imagine how long I have waited for this day. I can say with absolute certainty that I have lived for this moment alone. I have always believed that our paths would cross someday, and now, at last, the time has come. Sansa read the words with a blank expression. So far, it seemed like nothing more than an anonymous love letter. But then, the next lines sent a chill down her spine. I am the only one meant for you. You complete me and I complete you. I hold the answers you seek, so take this as proof of my sincerity. The memories you desperately chase, the answers you long for, and the power you possess. I wish I could tell you everything now, but such conversations should never be written on paper. Go alone to the western side of the temple. Beneath the river lies an old training facility, long abandoned. Meet me there and you will have your answers. I love you. The letter ended. Sansa remained still, silent. She read it once, then twice, then 3 more times. Her fingers curled into a slow, deliberate fist. "Lady Sansa, don't tell me you're—" One of her guards spoke up, but the look in her eyes had already given away her intentions. "You can't go, princess. This is dangerous." Sansa shook her head slowly. "It's obviously a trap. I know that. The person who wrote this might not know anything. They could just be trying to lure me out. But this might be my only chance to learn the truth." Her guards exchanged uneasy glances before turning back to her. "There's no need to worry. While I won't ignore this letter, who said I'd be going alone?" Sansa's plan was simple. The male shadow guard would accompany her, while the female one reported the letter to the temple authorities. Her logic was straightforward. They were still within temple grounds. She believed that whatever awaited her, she could handle it. But she had no idea what was about to unfold in the temple courtyard. Chapter 72. Unveiling the Truth. 2. Sansa took her time, reaching the location mentioned in the letter after nearly half an hour. She hadn't even known such a place existed. The underground facility was vast, dimly lit, with towering stands encircling multiple battle arenas. It looked like a battlefield from a forgotten era. Scanning the area, she searched for any sign of movement, any presence. Nothing. She was alone. She walked slowly past the massive arenas, each appearing as if it were waiting to witness a fight to the death. The air was thick with an eerie pressure. Yet no one was there. Sansa stood still for a moment, unease creeping into her chest when her smartwatch suddenly shut off. "No signal, huh?" Letting out a quiet breath, she climbed the empty stands, sitting down to observe the entire arena as she waited for the sender of the letter to appear. Though the place was dark, her vision remained sharp. For a moment, the arena before her was empty. Then, in the blink of an eye, a figure appeared at its center. Sansa bolted upright, eyes widening as she took in the sight of the young man standing before her. He bowed elegantly, a strange look in his eyes. "My apologies for keeping you waiting, my dear Sansa." Her brows furrowed. "Faireth, what are you doing here?" Without hesitation, Sansa leapt from the stands onto the arena, her expression darkening. "What am I doing here?" As if the answer was obvious, Faireth chuckled. "Why wouldn't I be here? I'm the one who invited you, after all." "You wrote that letter?" She had never expected the sender to be one of her own classmates. "If this is some kind of joke, it's not funny." She remained tense. The young man before her knew things he had no reason to know. Yet, Faireth looked utterly delighted, stepping closer with a bright smile. "This is no joke, Sansa. I'm completely serious." The next moment, his figure vanished, only to reappear right beside her. Sansa instinctively stepped back, her body reacting before her mind could register his movement. "You must be wondering, how did I find out about you? Am I right?" As he toyed with her, Sansa's mind raced to make sense of what was happening. Faireth had always been a prime suspect. Yet every time he managed to escape suspicion. Aura swirled around her body as she braced herself. Seeing this, Faireth sighed. "Why so hostile, my dear Sansa?" She raised her hand, black fumes rising from her fingertips. "You're the contractor, aren't you?" Faireth laughed softly. "What a lovely title you've given me. But yes, I am." She didn't give him a chance to say more. A black slash, faster than sound, shot toward him. Yet, inexplicably, the attack, one that was impossible to track with the naked eye, was dodged with ease. Aggressive and fierce. "But that's one of the reasons I love you. Dito. We're taking him down together and getting answers out of him." Sansa continued her rapid strikes, her attacks sharper and faster. She called for her personal guard, but Dito never appeared. Faireth, as if realizing something, suddenly stopped dodging and sighed in amusement. "Dito, Dito, Dito. Oh, you mean the guy who came with you." A cold wave of dread crashed into Sansa when she saw what he was holding. A mangled corpse. Faireth kept laughing, his expression disturbingly joyous. "This is our special moment, my dear Sansa. It would be terribly rude for someone to interrupt it." The body in his hands was disfigured beyond recognition, but the blood-stained temple robes left no doubt.
Impossible.
Shock paralyzed her. Dito Norman, a B-rank awakened, a final-year trainee at the temple, had Ferrith really defeated him in such a short time without a single injury? Dark blades materialized around Sansa as she grasped the gravity of the situation. She hurled them at him, but this time Ferrith didn't even bother dodging. He blocked them with his bare hands. "I don't understand. How did you escape the church's detection?" The black fumes around Sansa intensified, her attacks growing fiercer. Uriel herself was responsible for identifying contractors. "It's impossible to fake the screening." Ferrith looked as though he was growing bored. He deflected her attacks effortlessly, then appeared in front of her in an instant, grabbing her wrist. "Oh, my dear Sansa, you know nothing." With a single push, he slammed her onto the ground, pinning her down. Sansa gasped, but before she could react, an unseen force crushed her resistance. "The church couldn't detect me. Uriel couldn't see through me. Simply because the demon I contracted with is far beyond what those fools can perceive." Ferrith's grip tightened around her, his touch sending shivers through her entire body. Everyone obsesses over schemes. They all believe in some grand conspiracy, no matter what happens. Everyone suspected me. It was obvious I was the contractor, but they failed to convict me. Ferrith is safe. Ferrith passed the church's screening. All of it led them to think there was some greater force pulling the strings. He whispered beside her ear, savoring every moment. They convinced themselves, it can't be Ferrith. There must be some hidden mastermind lurking in the shadows. Someone unseen. Haha, I should thank them for their stupidity. Sansa's heart pounded as she felt his hand slowly tear through her clothing. They wasted their time chasing ghosts, blind to the true danger. Ferrith smirked. Kai Luke was among them all along. He chuckled as if amused. "And of course, I have to thank dear Fry. He drew just as much suspicion as I did." Ferrith chuckled softly before pulling Sansa into another embrace. "Forget about everything else. Whatever happens outside, let it. Right now, the only thing that matters is us. You've suffered so much, my dear Sansa, and everything I've done, all of it was for one person alone. You. You were my only light, the sole reason I endured the agony of this cursed contract." Slowly, he slipped off his shirt, his fingers trailing down Sansa's thigh before gliding upward, reaching for places he had no right to touch. But before he could, her eyes darkened. A strange, ominous black spread through them, and in the next instant, a violent surge of power erupted from her body, hurling Ferrith backward. "Ha!" Sansa rose unsteadily, struggling to contain herself. The energy coursing through her now was on an entirely different level, far stronger than anything she had ever wielded before. She bit her lip, trying to suppress it. She had been warned never to unleash this power, one she still didn't fully understand. But right now, she had no choice. The arena darkened unnaturally as her shadows spilled outward, engulfing the ground in a perfect, 5-meter-wide circle. Ferrith watched with intrigue as her voice rang out, cold and steady. "Ferrith Airlet, as a student of Class B, I failed to stop you before. But I will take responsibility now and erase you here." For a moment, silence. Then, Ferrith let out a laugh, mocking, amused. "Then come at me." From within Sansa's shadow, countless black spikes materialized, hovering in eerie stillness before launching forward at blinding speed. But she wasn't finished. More dark blades formed behind her, raining down in a relentless storm that shattered the arena to pieces. Yet, none of it touched him. Each devastating strike rebounded off a strange, invisible barrier surrounding Ferrith. Incredible! So this is the power they were talking about. "What are you talking about?" Ferrith grinned, his amusement deepening as he stepped forward. Nothing. You don't even know what you are, do you? That's normal. I don't fully understand it myself. Lifting a single finger, he conjured a tiny black sphere. The sphere twisted and stretched, morphing into a thin, needle-like form. Then, without warning, it shot forward at impossible speed, piercing Sansa's hand. Once, twice, dozens of times. Her arm was riddled with punctures before she even realized what had happened. A scream pressed against her throat, but she swallowed it back, gripping her bleeding hand. Ferrith stepped closer, his gaze unreadable. You don't know how much it hurts me to see you like this, Sansa. His voice was almost gentle. But I have to do this. So please, forgive me. He reached for her, but then, a sharp buzz broke the tension. Ferrith frowned, pulling a violet crystal from his pocket. Excuse me for a moment, my dear Sansa. Business comes first. He pressed the crystal, and a projection flickered to life, revealing Kai Luke. What the hell are you doing, Ferrith? I'm on my way to finish the job. I won't tolerate delays. I need you at the core now. We're setting this place ablaze. You know what happens if you fail. I know. I'll take care of it. You'd better.
Kai Luke's image vanished.
TCH. Annoying. Ferrith exhaled sharply before turning back to Sansa. Now, where were we? With a single flick of his hand, Sansa's top was torn away, and in a heartbeat, he was upon her once more. She wrapped her arms around herself, but it was pointless. He loomed over her completely. I don't have time to waste, my dear Sansa, so please, just give me my reward. As his hand reached for her, Sansa clenched her fists, her golden eyes darkening, swallowed by an abyssal black. She was on the brink of something unknown. If she let go now, if she released this power fully, who knew what would happen? But she knew one thing. Anything was better than letting herself be violated by him. Her breath hitched, and she squeezed her eyes shut, surrendering to the darkness. But before she could, Ferrith vanished. He reappeared several meters away, narrowly evading a sword slash aimed at his throat. Sansa's eyes snapped open. A third figure had entered the arena. A familiar silhouette, long black hair, fresh wounds across his body, evidence that he had just emerged from battle. He stood there, completely unfazed, his gaze locked onto Ferrith. Looks like I arrived just in time, before the show started. Fry! Sansa's voice was barely a whisper. He turned to her, expression unreadable, before tossing his coat in her direction. You look like a mess, princess. Ferrith clicked his tongue, irritation flashing in his eyes. Why do you all keep interrupting? Do I need to kill everyone just to get a moment alone with Sansa? The air grew heavier, a storm ready to break loose. Sorry, Fry said flatly. I just have a habit of ruining pathetic relationships whenever I see them, so you'll have to forgive my interference. The suffocating pressure surrounding Ferrith didn't faze him. Instead, he just kept provoking him. Sansa's chest tightened with fear. Run, Fry. You can't beat him. She didn't even think about herself. She only wanted him to escape. But he didn't even glance her way. Can't beat him? Fry tilted his head. Bit too early to say that, don't you think? At those words, Ferrith snapped. His power exploded outward, distorting the air, shaking the entire arena. You should have listened to her, Ferrith sneered. A nobody like you is no longer a challenge to me. Fry narrowed his eyes, peak B-class and still rising. At last, he understood what the system meant when it classified this world's difficulty as nightmare. Ferrith was far stronger than the old Fry, the one who was supposed to be the contractor. Perhaps he had made a deal with the upper demon number 19. Astaroth himself. Fry found himself wondering, can I even win against him? This monster in front of me. He exhaled, then tossed his sword aside. Lifting his left hand, he made a simple gesture. Both Sansa and Ferrith assumed he had surrendered. Too late, Ferrith sneered. Fry Starlight, I'm going to kill you and... Shut up for a second. Fry cut him off. A smirk played at his lips as the tattoo on his left arm began to glow. We're just about to get to the good part. The snake tattoo flared violently as he muttered a name.
Come forte, Valerion.
A strange fusion occurred, melding with his very arm. A black sword with no hilt trembled violently, craving blood. Frey's grip tightened. Now then, shall we begin? Chapter 73. A Battle to the Death 1. Frey Starlight POV. Calm down, Valerion. My sword trembled violently, thirsting for the blood of the man standing before me. I knew my chances of victory weren't great, but I wasn't worried. Valerion gave me the confidence I needed. And more than that, I had to stop him here. Ferith's mission was the same as Frey's in the original story, to destroy the core. The core was the energy source sustaining the celestial dome, the barrier surrounding the temple. It was like a nuclear reactor. If tampered with or destroyed incorrectly, it would trigger an explosion large enough to erase the temple from existence. Knowing this, stopping the contractor had always been my top priority. Neither Kai Luke nor the black-masked ones were the real danger right now, it was Ferith. I had to admit he'd given me some headaches before, but thanks to the image ability, everything was finally clear. In the second image, everyone in the elite class was struggling, everyone except two people. Princess Sansa and Ferith. That alone was enough for me to confirm his identity as the contractor. I had already burned through a lot of achievement points to use direct advice and get here, and as always, that damn system threw an obstacle in my path. On my way, a magic circle had suddenly appeared, unleashing dozens of invaders. I had to fight them all before reaching this place. Consider it a warm-up, though they were more troublesome than I expected. Which brings us to now. Winds raged violently around Ferith. The pressure he exuded was overwhelming. Yet the smirk on his face never wavered, not even at the sight of Valerion. Teske, look at you, Frey. Do you really think that sword in your hand will change anything? Slowly, he raised his hand toward me, black aura swirling around it. I'm going to tear that annoying face of yours apart, and then, slash. Blood gushed as I appeared behind him. You talk too much. As I spoke, a severed hand dropped to the ground. The attack was too fast for him to process. Ferith spun around violently, his once amused face now twisted in rage. The moment he turned, Valerion was already slicing through half his neck. Only then did he realize just how serious this was. Black runes ignited across his body. A moment ago, my sword had sliced his flesh with ease, but now, it refused to move forward. I frowned and tried to pull it free, but it was stuck. From his severed wrist, a new black hand emerged, one that extended into a massive 2-meter-long blade. All of this happened in the blink of an eye. Ferith let out a furious scream, swinging that monstrous weapon toward my face. Sensing the danger, I channeled a double dose of dark aura into Valerion, managing to yank it free and block the incoming slash. The sheer force of his strike sent me skidding several meters away, a sharp sting prickling my hand. The clean cut I had delivered was already healing, while his once pale skin darkened into a deep crimson. A strained smile crept onto my face. This won't be easy. Frey, 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 Frey! Quit yelling my name in that obnoxious voice. You're ruining it. Ferith's body convulsed as he kicked off the ground, vanishing in an instant. His blade was now reinforced with razor-sharp wind aura. He struck from above, but thanks to Hawk's Eye, I saw it coming and raised Valerion to block. It's always you. It has to be you. A deceptive kick sent me flying toward the stands before he leaped after me. You always show up to ruin everything. His massive blade came for my face. I deflected it with my sword, sparks bursting from the clash. The force of his weapon carved deep into the ground beside me. But then his free hand twitched unnaturally. A second blade, larger than the first, materialized. Devour! The blade was mere centimeters from me, but I used that split second to pull in an immense amount of air, my eyes glowing violet. A deafening explosion followed as I unleashed a wave of black aura, launching Ferrith into the sky. He glanced at his arm, noticing small cracks forming in his monstrous blade. Then, sensing an ominous energy above, he looked up, only to find me waiting. 10,000 steps of shadow, black meteor. Both his giant blades moved to guard his chest, but Balerion shattered them. The blade tore through his thick flesh as we both crashed into the ground. You want a brutal fight? 10,000 steps of shadow, mirage. 20 copies of me surrounded Ferrith, all slashing at him at once. Come on. I'll show you what brutality really means. Don't mess with me. A storm of razor-sharp wind erupted, forcing me back. Ferrith had located me in an instant. This time he fought with both hands, dozens of celestial spheres orbiting around him. He unleashed countless tornadoes and punches infused with both dark and wind aura. I struggled to defend myself. He could hit me from both near and far. The punches kept coming, each one strong enough to knock me out of the fight. I barely managed to block them. Balerion left new wounds on his body with every strike, but he regenerated instantly. And worse, those damn celestial spheres kept bombarding me. The injuries were piling up. I let the weaker blows land, sacrificing myself to block the deadlier ones. But I knew I couldn't keep this up forever. I tried to use phantom steps to increase my speed, but Ferrith kept up. I needed a way to lessen the pressure. But the relentless onslaught didn't give me any room to think. This ends now, Fry Starlight. Ferrith roared, summoning all his celestial spheres for a final attack. But before he could unleash it, a third force intervened. A series of rapid blasts obliterated his projectiles. Both of us turned in unison. Princess Sansa had risen to her feet, barely holding herself together. Pain was evident in her trembling frame, but she refused to let it hinder her. I'll handle the long-range attacks. Focus on taking him down. A grin stretched across my face before I could even stop it. A swordsman and a wave controller. This completely changed the game. Thanks. The balance had shifted again. With Sansa handling those pesky celestial spheres, I could finally focus on my opponent. Ferrith was livid. Dark aura pulsed violently around him, proof of his seething rage. His punches came faster. His voice reduced to nothing but furious screams. He was leagues above me. He had long since surpassed rank B and was now knocking on the door of rank A. Without Balerion, I would have been crushed already. But amid the chaos, I found an opening. His rage had consumed him, stripping away his discipline as a swordsman. Now he fought like a wild beast. If I timed my movements with Balerion's devastating strikes, I could take him down. A sinister smile crept across my lips as I clashed with him, the battlefield shaking under the weight of our blows. This was a battle of endurance. I had an infinite supply of aura, but my body wasn't limitless. And Sansa wouldn't hold out much longer either. Unlike me, Ferrith's wounds healed instantly. His body had grown monstrous, barely resembling his original form. Fall! Fall! D! The ground quaked beneath us, a sign that the war outside had reached its climax. And inside this arena it was no different. From a distance, I no longer looked like I was fighting a human. I was battling a monster. To end this, I needed to unleash the most powerful technique of the 10,000 Steps of Shadow, one that would deal irreparable damage. And so I did. For the next hour, we tore into each other with everything we had. I lost count of how many times Balerion pierced his flesh, how many times his blood, both red and black, splattered across the battlefield. Yet not a single strike was enough to finish him. Meanwhile, I could barely stand, my body riddled with wounds and broken bones. My face was smeared with blood, his and mine. I felt filthy. I drove Balerion into the ground, using it for support as I gasped for breath. Ferrith stood tall across from me, his wounds still knitting themselves back together. His regeneration had slowed significantly, but he was still in far better shape than me. You've lost, Fry Starlight. Chapter 74. A Battle to the Death, 2. Sansa was panting, struggling to recover from the relentless battle. Ferrith, adjusting to his monstrous form, barely managed to string together proper sentences. But then his expression twisted when he looked at me. He grabbed me by the hair, lifting me up with burning rage in his eyes. "You, tell me, what the hell is so funny?" Even with my bloodied face, my smile never wavered. Sansa was just as confused. Our loss was obvious, but Ferrith couldn't accept it. He kept shouting, spitting his frustration in my face. "Answer me, damn it. Look." He pointed at himself, still screaming. "All those brilliant attacks of yours? Already healed. Your strength? It's been fading since the start, and yet you still failed to kill me. Unlike you, I grow stronger with every passing second. That sword you take so much pride in? It did nothing against the blessing granted to me by the high devil Astaroth. You are nothing." He wasn't wrong. An awakened rank A was beyond me, even with Balerion. I could hold my own in brief skirmishes, but a fight to the death?
Impossible.
You knew all of this already, so tell me, why the hell are you still laughing? Heh, man, I already told you. I took a deep breath, summoning the last remnants of my strength. You talk too much. In an instant, I broke free from his grip, shifting into my stance. Balerion swung back, ready to unleash one final, all-or-nothing strike. 10,000 steps of shadow, infinite darkness. Ferrith's world was swallowed by shadow as my devastating slash tore through him, along with the Colosseum behind him. My hands trembled violently. If not for Balerion merging with me, I would have dropped it. That was my last attack. I still had an endless reserve of aura inside me, but my body had reached its limit. In front of me, Ferrith lay amidst the rubble, a massive wound stretching from his neck to his abdomen. If I had been just a little stronger, I could have cleaved him in half. But fate was cruel. I watched as his flesh pulled itself back together, his organs slowly realigning, black runes pulsating across his body. His regeneration had slowed to a crawl, but I could no longer take advantage of it. "Haha, look at you, Ferrith. Even with all that power, you're still lying at my feet. Pathetic." Slowly, he rose again, his wound still struggling to close. "Let's see how long you keep laughing." A massive, blood-red blade formed in his grasp. It was so large that he had to drag it behind him as he approached. With his half-severed neck and blood-soaked body, he looked more monstrous than ever. "So what now, Fry Starlight? Another hidden technique? A trump card? What's your next move?" I simply raised both hands. "Now, I surrender." Silence. Both Ferrith and Sansa stared at me, dumbfounded. Why so surprised? Isn't this the perfect time? "What the?" Ferrith started to speak, but I cut him off. "Not you. I wasn't talking to you." At that moment, Ferrith's shadow deepened, and from within it a figure emerged. Dark serpents of shadow writhed around him, and in his hands, two terrifying daggers, completely consumed by the power of darkness. With a single slash of his daggers, Ghost sent Ferrith's head soaring through the air, his body finally succumbing to the damage I had inflicted. Ha! As his severed head spun midair, Ferrith's mind struggled to process what had just happened. Memories flooded his consciousness. His life, the choices that led him here, the moment everything spiraled out of control. He didn't even know where Ghost had come from, didn't see him move, didn't understand how his head had separated from his body. Lying on the cold ground, his fading gaze landed on a familiar figure. San. Sa. And with that, life drained from his eyes. I collapsed onto the ground, struggling to catch my breath. Damn. If that hadn't worked, I have no idea what I would have done. This had been my last resort. From the start, I knew I couldn't defeat Ferrith, not as I was. He was simply stronger. But I wasn't alone. We weren't just a swordsman and a wave controller. We had an assassin. Ghost had been lurking in Ferrith's shadow all along, waiting for the perfect moment, the moment I had created for him. If given the right setup, Ghost was unstoppable. My role was simple. Weaken Ferrith enough for him to land the killing blow. And now it was over. Everyone lay on the ground, exhausted, except for Ghost. He stood still, eyes locked on Ferrith's mutilated corpse. Then he turned, his gaze shifting to my left hand. Or rather, to Balerion. At that moment, my sword faded into its tattooed form. I placed a finger over my lips. Let's keep this between us, yeah? Ghost nodded before stepping forward to help me up. Didn't expect you to pick up on my signal. How could I not? With the amount of killing intent you were throwing at me? You're sharper than you look, Fry Starlight. I dropped down beside the princess, who was barely clinging to consciousness. Ghost, noticing her condition, pulled out a few healing potions. Both Sansa and I drank eagerly, our bodies mending at a visible rate. Finally, she managed to speak. She turned to me, exhaustion written all over her face. Thank you, Fry, for saving me, for everything. I hated hearing those words. I waved her off quickly. No need to thank me. I wasn't the only one who saved you. We took him down together. But...
No buts.
Oh, and if you're really grateful, forget what you saw here. I mean this. I tapped the tattoo on my hand. Sansa nodded immediately. Good. Then we're all set. The distant roar of explosions continued, shaking the ground above us. The battle outside was still raging. Things aren't looking great up there. Hearing Ghost's remark, I tilted my head back before refocusing on him. What's your plan? I'm heading up. My brother needs me. What about you? I gestured toward Sansa. I've got unfinished business. Can I count on you to watch over the princess? I don't need protection. Sansa scowled, but I simply chuckled and pressed a finger against her side. Drop the act. Your wounds may be healed, but your strength hasn't recovered. That's the price of burning through your aura reserves. Both Sansa and Ghost shot me strange looks, because, of course, the same logic applied to me. Don't give me that look. I can still fight for a while before I'm done. Fry, are you sure you're not a hidden contractor yourself? Ignoring the question, I raised my fist toward Ghost. Forget that. Ghost, how about a round of rock, paper, scissors? What followed was Ghost and Sansa's reaction, their faces twisting in confusion. Chapter 75. An Unexpected Turn, 1. After hours of relentless battle that had engulfed the entire temple, the outside world was beginning to sense that something was terribly wrong. The blazing inferno, which at first resembled nothing more than fireworks, had long since proven otherwise. By now, many had attempted to enter the temple, but the impenetrable sky dome barrier had denied entry to all. Unless a high-tier awakened intervened soon, the temple's suffering was destined to continue. Inside the temple grounds, the most brutal battlefield of all, a strange clash was unfolding. The sky was a chaotic masterpiece, adorned with celestial bodies and intricate magic circles, each one raining down relentless devastation upon everything below. Kai-Luke had tried everything. He bent reality, wove illusions, and even stripped his opponent of his senses. Yet, somehow, Choupo-Moting had endured, matching him blow for blow, despite the undeniable gulf in raw power between them. Choupo-Moting, the undisputed champion of the arena, was the temple's greatest martial artist. In terms of skill, he surpassed all others. But that alone was not the reason he had lasted this long. No, it was the radiant golden light enveloping his body. The long-lost Dawn Guard staff had become the pivotal force in this battle. Amidst the ceaseless barrage, the instructors stood below, watching in tense silence. A bitter weight settled in their hearts. They exchanged glances, only to realize that the same golden glow shielding Choupo now covered them as well. Even in his dire state, he was still protecting them. That alone was enough to make them forget their wounds, their exhaustion, their utter depletion of aura. Each one of them poured every last drop of strength they had left, desperate to support the man who was fighting in their place. Kai-Luke was not pleased. After all his efforts to crush their spirits, to drag them into the depths of despair, they were standing again. It enraged him, All because of you, you damned. Because of that black-clad warrior. More than anyone, Kai Luke understood that prolonging this fight any further would not work in his favor. His advantage had stemmed from years of meticulous preparation, shaping this battlefield to his will. That, and the demonic contract he had made. But even those advantages were waning after hours of relentless combat. The thousands of magic circles filling the sky were beginning to vanish, one by one. And yet, he did not panic. He only needed to hold out a little longer. A massive distortion circle was still forming in the background. An incantation so powerful that it would consume the entire temple and summon the true Ultra's army. He just had to endure. Just a little more. That thought curled Kai Luke's lips into a slow, wicked grin as he whispered under his breath. Ascension. His crimson eyes gleamed as his smirk faded into an eerie stillness. The celestial bodies halted their bombardment. The magic circles grew quiet. Chupo Moting tightened his grip on his staff. His gaze locked onto the sorcerer before him. Kai Luke was willingly abandoning his advantage in ranged combat. What is he doing? It should have been the perfect moment to end him. And yet, years of battle-hardened instincts told Chupo that something was wrong. Are you sure you want to just stand there? What are you talking about? Kai Luke's expression remained void of emotion as he raised a single finger, pointing downward. Below them, his entire remaining arsenal had been redirected, aimed precisely at those who had managed to survive, including the instructors. A devastating onslaught, unleashing everything at once, descended toward the ground. Kai Luke was now completely defenseless. Perhaps, from the very start, this had been the best opportunity to take him down. And yet, Chupo could not move. So, Kai Luke's voice dripped with mockery. Will you save them? Or shall we settle this with our fists? The answer was obvious. Even a man who had spent his life concealing his emotions was not empty after all. In an instant, Chupo appeared before the surviving instructors and students. Above him, thousands of celestial projectiles and magic circles hovered, ready to strike. The sheer amount of gathered aura was staggering, forcing him to tighten his grip around his staff. The wooden frame cracked apart, crumbling to dust, revealing the elegant golden rod hidden within, its surface adorned with intricate silver engravings. From its core, a liquid-like golden aura surged outward, enveloping him and all those behind him. Bloodshot eyes filled with regret turned toward him. The instructors knew, every one of them knew, that he had reached this point because of them. If only they had been stronger, if only they hadn't exhausted themselves before, this would never have happened. Perish. With a single utterance, tens of thousands of streaks, each infused with a different element, erupted forth. It was a breathtaking sight, an apocalyptic downpour of destruction, blotting out the sky. Harg! With a roar that shook the heavens, the Black Warrior unleashed the full power of the Dawn Guard staff, forming an unyielding shield around those he swore to protect. And then, boom! Across the battlefield, whether they were students, intruders, or even those beyond the barrier, everyone stopped. For a fleeting moment, the fighting ceased, as all turned toward the heart of the explosion, sensing the sheer magnitude of the aura it had unleashed. One student, fortunate enough to have survived, hesitantly opened his eyes, having been convinced that death was inevitable. He found himself, along with a few other students and instructors, standing atop the only solid ground left, surrounded by the remains of what had once been the temple. We survived! He could hardly believe it. But at what cost? Before them, Chupo Moting was kneeling, his grip still firm on his staff. Blood pooled beneath him. His aura pathways ruptured from being pushed beyond their limit. Clap, clap. Descending from the sky, Kai Luke landed gracefully before him, slow applause ringing through the silence. Well done. His voice dripped with amusement. You actually managed to protect them. Chupo, drenched in blood, forced his trembling body to rise once more. His breath was ragged, but he still stood. The remaining instructors, with Alexander Fleming at the forefront, watched the scene unfold with grim expressions. The champion of the arena, Chupo, with a single glance he understood everything. He had blocked the attack, yes, but in doing so he had destroyed his aura pathways. In other words, he was out of the fight. He could no longer battle. Kailuk saw this, and yet somehow he only grew colder. The gleam in his eyes remained unwavering.
Come coupo.
Face me. Kailuk threw a punch, his fist cloaked in crimson aura. The blow struck Chupo's face, forcing him to cough up blood. What's the matter? The champion of the arena tried to resist, but his body was in shambles. Kailuk delivered strike after strike, his expression never changing. Minutes passed in relentless assault before the sorcerer finally halted. Then, at his silent command, one of the celestial spheres shifted, firing a beam of energy that tore a massive hole through a nearby student's chest. Fight, Chupo. Another beam struck. An instructor fell lifelessly to the ground. Fight, or everything you fought for will be for nothing. Another student dropped. Then another. And another. Chupo gritted his teeth and lunged at Kailuk. But it was pointless. A one-sided massacre. The gap between a man who had exhausted himself completely and one who still had plenty to spare was insurmountable. One question echoed in Chupo's mind. When had the tide turned? Kailuk remained eerily composed. Every move he made was precise, flawless. It was as if he could see the future. With one vile trick, he had completely overturned the battle. Chupo was sharp enough to realize his opponent was using some kind of skills. And with every punch he endured, someone behind him died at the hands of those floating spheres. He had lost, utterly and completely. At last, the black warrior collapsed before Kailuk, who calmly raised his palm, violent energy crackling within it. Farewell, Chupo. Chapter 76. An Unexpected Turn. 2. The attack was mere moments from being unleashed. Some of the onlookers could already see it, the image of Chupo's chest being blown apart. Among them, a girl sat trembling, clutching the lifeless body of an old woman. She had already lost her mentor, and now she was about to lose the teacher who had taught her how to fight. Sophia Tan had been frozen ever since that old woman had died in her arms. But seeing the man who had been like a father to her on the brink of death, it shattered that paralysis. A raging fire ignited in her chest, an inferno of grief and fury surging within her, until she could contain it no longer. Kailuk was moments away from ending Chupo when a violent wave of aura exploded across the battlefield. He dodged with ease, turning his gaze toward the purple-haired woman who now stood before him. Take your filthy hands off him. Her furious scream echoed through the arena, but Kailuk remained indifferent. You're still here. Sophia Tan didn't answer. She lunged forward, unleashing white waves of aura. The sorcerer deflected the repeated attacks, but he quickly noticed something significant.
Pure aura.
She wasn't using her usual wind-based abilities. She was wielding raw, untainted aura, something far more difficult to control. Sophia, Chupo, lying motionless, could do nothing but watch. Watch as she fought. A fierce battle erupted, waves of aura clashing as Sophia and Kailuk engaged in close combat. Somehow, she was keeping up with him, even though he still had an extra reservoir of aura thanks to his contract. Where is she drawing this power from? Even while under attack, Kailuk had the luxury of analyzing his opponent. Is it her emotions? Her rage? She fought like a woman possessed, striking wildly at everything in her path. Kailuk smirked at the sight. Then let's do this properly. He stepped forward, meeting her head-on. The two exchanged blows without restraint. From the sidelines, Chupo and the others watched in stunned silence. They saw her rise again, somehow stronger than before. Little by little, she gained the upper hand. And finally, after hundreds of clashes, blood splattered across the ground as a severed hand flew into the sky. Sophia had cut off Kailuk's right arm. The sorcerer fell to one knee before her, gripping his shoulder where his limb had once been. Tisk tsk. That stings. She stood over him, her gaze burning with fury. Does it? Another wave of aura surged. His left hand was severed next. How about now? She continued cutting through his body, deliberately avoiding fatal points. You betrayed your people. You betrayed yourself. You slaughtered those you lived alongside in cold blood. Why? She was keeping him alive on purpose, torturing him. Sophia, finish it. Kill him. Chupo-Moting, lying behind her, pleaded weakly. But she wasn't listening. Her rage was all-consuming. After severing all his limbs, she formed a blade of pure aura in her hand. Just disappear already. She was moments away from severing his head when she froze. He was laughing. Yes, that's right. Sophia's brows furrowed at the man before her. What the hell are you talking about? Kai Luke only chuckled in response. This really does hurt. Then, a searing heat ignited in her chest, followed by an agony beyond words. Her gaze dropped slowly. A bloodied hand protruded from her torso.
Kai Luke had vanished.
In his place lay a severed arm. Behind her, the sorcerer stood, completely unscathed, despite having lost his right hand. Blood spilled from Sophia's lips as her mind struggled to grasp the reality of what had happened. Kai Luke stepped closer, embracing her gently from behind, his left hand still impaled through her back. What did you think would happen? His voice was soft, almost mocking. That you'd win through sheer rage? Through emotion alone? A cold chuckle escaped his lips. From the very beginning, you were nothing more than a puppet. So easy to manipulate, you never even noticed the illusion I trapped you in. With agonizing slowness, he withdrew his hand, letting her collapse into a pool of her own blood. Casually, he strolled over to retrieve his severed right hand, the crimson glow in his eyes fading as his usual composed expression returned. Damn, this skill really drains me, but at least it did its job. Chupo-Moting had been right. Kai Luke had used a skill, one that had ensured their complete and utter downfall. A skill none of them had fully understood until now. Muttering in irritation, the sorcerer pressed his severed limb against his shoulder, attempting to reattach it. I really should have gotten a contract that grants regeneration. Unlike Ferrith, whose contract focused on bodily restoration, Kai Luke's was centered around aura. And now he was paying the price. Sophia lay gasping, a gaping hole in her chest. Chupo lay motionless in a pool of his own blood. The rest were too weak to act. Seconds later, Kai Luke flexed his fingers as his right hand seamlessly reattached. Pressing his palm to the ground, his expression darkened. It's time to end this farce. A massive formation began spreading beneath his feet, expanding outward like creeping shadows. Despair, he murmured. Feel your hope slip away. Laughter rippled through him, rising into a manic crescendo. The distortion gate is complete. The Ultra's army was about to descend. But then, like shattered glass, cracks splintered across the summoning circle. And in mere moments, the grand formation collapsed into ruin. Kai Luke's eyes widened. The circle broke? His mind reeled. What happened? Why did it fail? Was it a mistake? An unforeseen variable? But before he could process it all, footsteps, slow, measured, approaching from behind. Instinctively, he turned. Why do you look so surprised? A young man stood before him, golden hair glinting under the dim light, his expression unreadable. You! Kai Luke's voice was laced with disbelief. The prince. Aegon Valerian stepped forward, emerging from the cluster of students who had remained hidden behind the instructors until now. With a sigh, he peeled off his shirt, muttering in annoyance. Ugh! This armor is suffocating. Beneath his clothes, a sleek black cuirass gleamed, intricate golden engravings lining its surface. Kai Luke's gaze sharpened. What are you doing here? There was an edge to his voice now, caution. This wasn't someone he had accounted for. And the timing, the prince had appeared the exact moment the distortion gate had failed. There were no coincidences in this world. and this was no exception. A slow, eerie smile curled Aegon's lips as he spread his arms wide. "I believe. This is what you were trying to do earlier, wasn't it?" Beneath his feet, a new summoning circle began to spread, a formation far grander than the last, one that engulfed the entire temple.
Impossible.
Shock rippled through Kai Luke's expression, along with every other onlooker. "This can't be." Aegon's grin widened into something utterly unhinged. "Oh, but it is." The circle pulsed with overwhelming brilliance. And then, a deafening explosion erupted as the distortion gate was torn open. From the void, across every inch of the temple, thousands of Imperial soldiers materialized, their banners unfurling as the elite forces of the royal palace emerged. The Empire's troops descended upon the invaders, their weapons gleaming as they charged into the fray. And thus, the massacre began anew. But this time, the tides had turned. Aegon Valerian reveled in the chaos, arms outstretched as he raised his voice. "I'll borrow your words, Kai Luke." His golden eyes gleamed with ruthless amusement. "Let the show begin." Chapter 77, Massacre 1. Let the show begin. With just 2 words, bursts of radiant light erupted around the temple as the Imperial Knights materialized out of thin air. Even the courtyard was no exception, for figures appeared around Aegon, each clad in heavy black armor, wielding a weapon distinct from the others. The sight of them surrounding the prince was nothing short of breathtaking, both stunning and shocking. Kai Luke broke into a cold sweat the moment he recognized them. The Knights of the Round Table. Lying battered on the ground, Chupo stared in disbelief at the scene before him. With a weak, trembling voice, he muttered, "The prince." He actually made the Knights of the Round Table his subordinates. For the first time since the battle began, a chilling realization crept over Kai Luke. He was in more danger than ever before. Spear and sword move forward. Shield and staff stay in the back. Understood. Aegon Valerian issued his orders without a hint of urgency, and the knights responded as one. These 4 warriors were among the Empire's strongest, each ranked at S+, a force to be reckoned with. To make matters worse, each specialized in a different field, making them an unstoppable unit. In an instant, the swordsman lunged at Kai Luke with ruthless aggression. Kai Luke instinctively tried to retreat, but something was restricting his magic, rendering him barely able to dodge. Then came the spear wielder, striking from behind, leaving no room to breathe as he thrust forward without mercy. At the back, the mage continuously disrupted Kai Luke's spells, while the sword and spear pressed their assault. The shield stood guard before the prince, who orchestrated the battlefield with absolute control. A flawless formation, nearly unbreakable. Kai Luke was trapped. His mind raced, trying to process what had just happened. When had the prince turned the tables? How did he disable the warp circle? Aegon read the questions plainly on his face. Is the truth really so difficult to accept? Kai Luke fought desperately, relying solely on his magic, but he was already reaching his limit. Each time he attempted to strike Aegon, his attacks were effortlessly intercepted by the shield-bearer. And, as expected, it didn't take long. Within minutes, a bloodied, battered figure collapsed at Aegon Valerian's feet. Kai Luke's demonic powers struggled to heal him, but the sheer number of wounds made recovery nearly impossible. Well done. The 4 knights nodded in acknowledgement, now fully encircling Aegon and Kai Luke. It was clear they had intentionally spared Kai Luke's life, a silent testament to Aegon's specific orders. Kneeling in a pool of his own blood and sweat, Kai Luke looked nothing like the man who had once commanded overwhelming power over his enemies. A short distance away, Chupo Moting, still gravely injured, desperately crawled toward Sophia, whose breaths were growing weaker by the second. Yet, Aegon did not spare his dying professor a single glance. His focus remained solely on the kneeling man before him. Kai Luke slowly lifted his head, meeting Aegon's golden gaze. How? A single word. A simple question. Aegon had been waiting for this. In fact, he had hoped Kai Luke would ask. He tilted his head slightly, a smirk tugging at his lips. This is entirely your fault, Kai Luke. My fault. From the very beginning, you prioritized the wrong things. You convinced yourself that no first-year student could ever be a threat to you. You thought dealing with the professors was enough. And yet, here you are, kneeling before me. I can't help but admire your stupidity. You bastard! Kai Luke attempted to rise, but before he could move, a merciless spear pierced his leg, forcing him back down. Relax. We're just getting started. No need to rush your death, don't you think? Mocked by a boy not even 18, Kai Luke had no choice but to lower his head, his mind scrambling for a way out. He whispered under his breath, "Ascension," but nothing happened. His skill was still on cooldown from earlier. He was completely on his own. His first instinct, stall for time. So he refocused on Aegon. You still haven't answered me. Aegon saw through his attempt instantly but decided to indulge him anyway. If you're asking how I turned your own magic against you, the answer is simple. I knew what you were trying to do from the start. He raised a finger to his eye, then to his ear, and finally tapped the center of his forehead, the smirk never leaving his face. I see everything. I hear everything. I know everything that happens within this empire. As a prince, it is my duty to monitor every piece on my board and prepare for anything that may unfold. That is what it means to have absolute control. Kai Luke's expression twisted in disbelief. Are you telling me that? Yes. Aegon nodded firmly. I told you I know everything that happens within this empire. Naturally, your pathetic little schemes over the years were no exception. All I had to do was make a few adjustments to that perfect magic circle you spent so long preparing. And just like that, your entire plan collapsed. But I must admit, what a twisted scheme you came up with. Aegon was enjoying himself. Meanwhile, confusion clouded Kai Luke's face. I don't understand. If you knew this was going to happen, why didn't you stop it? Why wait until the last moment to intervene? Aegon's smirk widened as if he had just heard the dumbest question in existence. Are you an idiot? Ha! Aegon burst into laughter, barely containing himself. Stop you? Intervene? On the contrary, I should be thanking you.
Im grateful Kai Luke.
After all, opportunities like this don't come every day. Kai Luke finally began to realize just how insane the man before him truly was. You wiped out so many useless pieces I no longer needed. You did the dirty work for me. And most importantly, you gave me the perfect opportunity to shape my story. Story. That's right. In the end, the only name people will remember is the one who saved the temple, Aegon Valyrian, while the temple itself takes all the blame, granting me even greater authority to interfere in the future. Aegon's smirk grew even wider. You were a fantastic piece, a marvelous one that played its role flawlessly. He patted Kai Luke's head as if praising a loyal pet before leaning in close. But your role isn't over yet. We don't get a catch like you every day. Kai Luke remained silent. He had just realized the truth. He had been dancing in the palm of Aegon's hand all along. And the worst part? He had never even realized it until now. Gritting his teeth, his body flared with crimson light. I won't forget this, Aegon Valyrian. Sensing his intent, the four knights moved instantly, but it was too late. In less than a second, Kai Luke vanished without a trace. The knights were momentarily stunned, but Aegon's expression remained unchanged. Shall we pursue him? A knight asked in a hushed tone, but Aegon simply shook his head. No need. I already know where he's gone. His words didn't surprise the knights before him. After following him for so long, they had come to a unanimous realization. This prince was terrifying. His capabilities were beyond comprehension. Chapter 78. Massacre. 2. The battlefield had grown eerily silent. Only Aegon, his knights, and a handful of surviving students and professors remained. Meanwhile, The Imperial army was methodically eliminating the last remnants of the Ultras, signaling the battle's inevitable conclusion. Choupo-Moting, still gravely wounded, struggled to move toward Sophia's unconscious body. For some reason, an ominous feeling had been gnawing at him, refusing to dissipate. Elsewhere, the students sighed in relief, some even cheering for the prince. They were mesmerized by the young man who, despite being younger than all of them, had accomplished what they never could. Of course, they were unaware of the conversation that had just taken place between Aegon and Kai-Luke. The sorcerer had sealed all sound, ensuring that no one overheard the chilling exchange. Had they known, their reactions would have been drastically different. Many among them were injured, especially the professors. Choupo-Moting and Sophia were in the worst condition. Sophia was already teetering on the edge of death. "My prince, should we assist them?" the sorcerer asked cautiously, having assessed the severity of their injuries. Aegon was still smiling as he turned toward the students cheering for him. "Oh, them." He paused briefly before issuing his next command. "Kill them all. They died in battle." For the first time, even the knights of the Round Table froze in place. "Excuse me?" the sorcerer asked, disbelief evident in his voice. Unlike before, he hadn't sealed the sound this time. Aegon's words were heard by all, and those with heightened senses stiffened instantly. "Don't make me repeat myself. Kill them. I have no use for worthless pieces." A heavy silence settled over the battlefield, the weight of his command sinking in. "Understood, my lord." The knights obeyed. Fleming stepped forward, his voice firm. "Aegon, what do you mean by this?" Fleming never got the chance to finish. His head separated cleanly from his body, blood painting the earth in a crimson arc. The spear moved next, impaling multiple people in one swift motion. Screams and agonized cries filled the air as the massacre resumed. The very weapons that had once protected them had now become the instruments of their execution. "Why? Why are you doing this? Aren't you on our side?" The same desperate questions echoed amidst the chaos. The hands of both the swordsman and spearman trembled slightly as they carried out their orders, but they never hesitated. Aegon watched with disinterest. "Why?" he scoffed. "What use do I have for people who couldn't even handle a single man?" Many begged for their lives, pleading for mercy, but Aegon remained unmoved. To him, they were already worthless. Neither humans nor tools, just waste to be discarded. If there was one person he hesitated to kill, it was the man staring at him now. "What a shame." Choupo-Moting. Aegon strode forward, drawing his sword as tendrils of lightning crackled around him. "You were an important piece. I had high expectations for you." He shook his head in disappointment. "But you ruined everything. You chose to protect those people. And now you're watching them die before your eyes. Our choices define us, Choupo, and yours was the wrong one." Choupo-Moting had been a formidable warrior, but he had destroyed his own aura pathways when he blocked that devastating attack earlier. Had he sacrificed the others back then, he could have defeated Kai-Luke. But instead, he chose to save them, and now he was paying the price. Choupo didn't respond to Aegon's words. Even in his broken state, he continued crawling toward Sophia's body. "Even now, you're trying to protect them." Sophia had been unconscious for a while, oblivious to the carnage unfolding around her. She hovered between life and death, a deep wound carved into her chest. Choupo gritted his teeth, using his staff to push himself up one last time. "You're right, our choices shape us." From his pocket, he retrieved a strange artifact and gently placed it on Sophia's body. "I've reached a crossroads, and I've made my decision. I have no regrets." His crimson-stained eyes lingered on Sophia before he tossed the artifact onto her. "At the very least, I won't let him decide your fate." The moment it made contact, the artifact emitted a faint blue glow before vanishing completely, almost as if it had never been there. Aegon did nothing. He simply observed Choupo make his final move. "Very well." The prince smirked before raising his sword. Watching Aegon's blade slowly descend, Chupo murmured to himself, already knowing what was to come. The new generation is truly terrifying. With a single stroke, Chupo-Moting was cleaved in two. His upper body crashed to the ground in a gruesome display, while his lower half remained standing. Without a shred of emotion, Aegon wiped his blade clean and turned away. Farewell, Chupo-Moting. At that very moment, the swordsman and spearmen finished slaughtering the rest. The sorcerer maintained the sound barrier, ensuring that no outside eyes could witness the horrors that had unfolded here. Retrieve the Dawn Guard staff. It will be useful in the future. Understood. The shield-bearer hurried to collect the staff. Aegon had no intention of respecting the final possession of the so-called King of the Ring. Instead, he would claim everything of value for himself. My lord, that man managed to send the woman away, but she hasn't gone far. I can track her now and— No need, Aegon interrupted, shaking his head. Sophia is already on the brink of death. A little gamble with fate won't hurt. If she dies, so be it. If she survives, she'll continue playing her role as always. After all, she didn't see anything. But my lord, if she lives and discovers what happened here, she could become a threat in the future. Aegon chuckled. Then I'll have one more entertaining enemy to deal with. The prince laughed while the knights of the Round Table remained silent. Their faith in him was absolute. This was neither the first nor the second massacre he had orchestrated. No matter how ruthless his actions were, they had always paved the way for a greater future, something they had witnessed with their own eyes. That was why they had chosen to follow him, no matter what. Burdened by the weight of their sins, the knights said nothing as Aegon's thoughts had already drifted elsewhere. Which new pieces would replace those he had discarded today? One thing was certain. His name had already been immortalized as the savior of the temple. His influence had grown, and he had taken yet another decisive step toward the throne. At long last, the battle of the temple was nearing its end. Chapter 79. The New Generation. 1. The Temple. Deep within the temple's corridors, a young woman with round glasses struggled to survive. Adriana gripped her spear tightly, her wary gaze sweeping across her surroundings. Time and again, masked figures in black had ambushed her, yet she had managed to stay alive so far. Everywhere she turned, corpses littered the floor. Some belonged to enemies, others to her fellow students. What the hell is going on? A shiver ran down her spine, but before she could collect her thoughts, a new group emerged ahead. Leading them was a tall, muscular man with gray hair, clad in black. His lips curled into a knowing smirk the moment their eyes met. Bring her. And just like that, the hunt began. Adriana bolted, pushing her legs to their limit as ragged breaths burned her throat. What do I do? What do I do? What do I do? Fighting wasn't an option. Even without clashing, she could tell, the pressure radiating from their leader alone was overwhelming. The gap between them was insurmountable. Right now, all she could do was run. Where are you going, sweetheart? Come play with us for a bit. Two of the masked figures lunged from behind, their attacks swift and relentless. Adriana managed to parry a few with her spear, but she wasn't lucky enough to escape unscathed. Blood trickled down her arm. Enough! Kill her! The gray-haired man watched from the back, his expression one of utter boredom. Her pursuers moved in for the kill. But before they could land the finishing blow, Adriana threw herself through the doors of a nearby hall, slamming them shut behind her. The assassins chuckled. Did she just trap herself? Amused, they reached for the door. And then, bang, bang, bang. Their bodies convulsed, riddled with countless high-speed bullets before they could even react. They collapsed, lifeless. What the? Sensing danger, their leader's aura flared, gray energy surging around him. But before he could make a move, a devastating blast of water-based aura tore through the wall beside him, engulfing his body in an instant. In mere seconds, he was reduced to a mangled heap of flesh. Adriana could hardly believe her eyes. Just moments ago, she had been on the verge of death. She had fled into this room purely on instinct, desperate to buy herself even a few more seconds. But this was beyond anything she had expected. Slowly, she turned her head, and there, seated calmly with a cup of instant noodles in his hands, was an old man in a black suit. Professor Luca? At the sound of his name, Luca Bonatiro spared her a brief glance before returning to his meal. Tears welled up in Adriana's eyes. After all the horror, all the despair, she had finally found a sliver of hope. Professor! She tried to approach him, but an invisible force kept her at bay. Stay back, girl. Can't you see I'm eating? His tone was one of mild annoyance, but Adriana paid it no mind. Professor Luca, the temple has been infiltrated. They killed so many of us. We have to. Can you be quiet for a moment? You're talking too fast. Besides, I already know what's happening outside. His words silenced her. Adriana glanced around. The hall was empty save for the professor and his prized collection of artifacts. Artifacts he had always spoken about with great pride. Summoning her courage, she asked the question weighing on her mind. Professor, if you know what's happening, why are you still here? And why would I leave? A swift, immediate response. She faltered, caught off guard by the counter-question. Aren't professors supposed to protect their students? Luca let out a sigh as he finished his food, then turned toward her. Everything I care about in this godforsaken world is inside this hall. He gestured around him, toward the artifacts and relics he treasured. Each of these holds far greater value than you useless students. They are my precious children. I didn't help you earlier. I was simply eliminating threats to my collection. Rising to his feet, he strolled leisurely through the grand hall. The situation outside will resolve itself soon enough. Whether you choose to hide here or run off to play the hero, that's entirely up to you. Adriana shuddered, recalling the lifeless bodies scattered across the temple's corridors. She found herself unable to refute his reasoning. Instead, she quietly retreated to a corner of the hall, wrapping her arms around her knees. Luca chuckled at the sight. A wise decision. Time crawled by, each second dragging like an eternity. More students arrived one by one. Luca made no effort to stop them, allowing them to gather beside Adriana. The black-clad assassins, however, met a different fate. The moment they set foot inside, their bodies were shredded like wet paper. Meanwhile, Luca occasionally fiddled with his left eye. Each time he did, his expression would shift, making the students even more uneasy. After several hours, he finally exhaled, his face blank. So, even you lost, Chupo? He had been observing everything within the temple through his unique ability, manipulating all water within his domain as an extension of himself. No one had noticed the tiny, water-formed eyes floating invisibly throughout the battlefield. Perhaps it's time for me to escape with my collection. Just as Luca entertained the thought, he spotted a certain young man advancing toward Kai Luke. Is that Prince Aegon? The moment the prince entered the battlefield, everything changed. Luca's water-formed eyes were abruptly destroyed by an external force, severing his connection to the outside world. At the same time, Imperial soldiers flooded into the temple. Luca remained frozen for a moment before bursting into laughter. Now things are getting interesting. The students exchanged uneasy glances. To them, the professor's behavior seemed downright insane. Luca continued laughing for some time, until, suddenly, the entire hall was bathed in a blinding blue light. Then, a woman crashed violently to the floor. Her body was broken, blood gushing from a gaping hole in her chest. Luca observed the scene, his usual calm undisturbed. Oh, what do we have here? His tone remained nonchalant, but Adriana's scream shattered the silence. Professor Sophia! Elsewhere in the temple, as Adriana fled, a thunderous battle raged in another part of the temple. The temple's miracle, the strongest among the first years. Snow Lionheart, a warrior who had never tasted defeat, fought like a beast among beasts, his deep-seated hatred fueling every strike against those who had stolen everything from him. Amidst the chaos, Lara Croft found herself trapped within a massive horde of nightmare beasts. Every now and then, she stole a glance at the distant battlefield, hundreds of meters away. "Snow!" she murmured, her voice trembling. But the girl beside her quickly snapped her back to reality. "Focus, Lara." Everything within Ceres Moonlight's domain froze into shards of ice. She led the charge, cutting through the monsters attempting to surround them. There's no point worrying about others when you can't even guarantee your own survival. The beasts were ravenous, their numbers overwhelming. Fortunately, the rest of the first-year elite class had joined the fray. Ragna, Danzo, Dawn Polaris, and others fought relentlessly, trying to contain the rampaging monsters. Fighting humans was one thing. Fighting nightmare beasts was an entirely different ordeal. They were relentless, unfazed by wounds that would have killed any human. Their combat patterns were unpredictable, their monstrous abilities defying logic. Lara clenched her bow, steadying her breathing. If she hesitated, she would die. She loosed arrows at every beast within range, whispering under her breath, "He'll be fine." Chapter 80. The New Generation, 2. Snow Lionheart POV. A slash from the right, a downward strike, a devastating kick. I pushed myself to my limits, forcing my body to keep up with the masked figure standing before me. Activating King of War mode, my power surged, granting me mastery over countless combat techniques. Fire, lightning, wind, sound, light, the power of the stars. I threw everything at him. Yet no matter what I unleashed, every attack was mercilessly annihilated by the eerie aura surrounding his blade. Each of his strikes felt like they were shattering me piece by piece. What's wrong? A devastating slash sent me flying backward, my sword cracking even further. "Is this all you've got?" I clenched my jaw, frustration boiling inside me. The fact that this man was an Ultras only made things worse. I forced my star aura to its absolute limits. Void step. The distance between us vanished in an instant as I lunged at him, pouring every ounce of strength into my attack. But he saw through me. He raised his sword to defend, but this time, it wasn't just the ominous silver aura surrounding his blade. There was something else. "Is that fire?" Our swords clashed, unleashing a massive explosion. At first, my star-powered strike overpowered his, until I saw my energy being devoured before my very eyes. Black flames? The fire was overwhelming, radiating an intensity that threatened to burn me alive. I retreated immediately, realizing the sheer danger. But he didn't let me breathe. This time he attacked. "You seem shaken." Arcs of black fire tore through my defenses. No matter how powerful my elemental barriers were, they burned away like paper. "Before, you never hesitated. You slaughtered everyone who stood in your way." "Shut up," I roared, swinging wildly. But no matter what I did, he dismantled every move with terrifying precision. "Why won't you kill me like you did the others? Why not? It was so easy before." I tried to block out his words. I forced myself to focus, but a sudden searing pain shot through my right shoulder. His blade had pierced me. It wasn't just a cut. It felt like molten lava had been poured into my flesh. Gritting my teeth, I activated Void Step, escaping just in time. I reappeared several meters away, gasping for breath, blood dripping from my shoulder. Yet that wasn't the worst part. The black flames continued to burn, gnawing at my flesh, threatening to consume me whole. I barely managed to suppress them before shifting my gaze back to him. I forced myself to stand, but the moment I moved, my sword shattered into countless pieces. "What? Looks like you've reached your limit." He took slow, deliberate steps toward me. His black flames burned fiercer than ever. "Your friends are fighting so hard against the nightmare beasts." His voice was calm, almost mocking. "What do you think? Should I visit them before finishing you off?" I couldn't see his expression beneath the mask. Only his crimson eyes glowed in the darkness. and with every word he spoke, my fury boiled. It's not over yet. Oh! From the shattered remains of my sword, a new blade emerged. A radiant, pure white sword, forged from my very aura. The star aura surged violently around me. I launched forward with everything I had. Second sword, sky-severing slash. The sheer force of my attack reflected in his crimson eyes. Yet, he didn't flinch. He simply raised his sword, and in an instant, a massive eruption of black fire engulfed the battlefield. You still don't understand. The flames devoured everything in their path. My strike was swallowed whole. You can't defeat me. The masked man stood amidst the raging inferno, and scathed. No one can. The black flames roared toward me, fast and merciless. But just before they could reach me, a wall of ice erupted from the ground, blocking the attack. Neither I nor the masked man had anticipated an outside interference. Before he could react, 3 figures closed in, surrounding him from different angles. You wanted to visit us earlier, didn't you? You don't mind if we return the favor, do you? Danzo, his fist wrapped in an aura that gleamed like steel. Ragna, his spear crackling with wind. Dawn, his blade drenched in fire. 3 warriors, 3 attacks, 3 different directions. The masked man twisted in place, releasing a wave of black fire that blasted them all away. But the moment he did, a rain of arrows fell upon him from his blind spots. Pointless. The second they neared him, the arrows were reduced to ash. Snow, are you all right? Turning around, I found Lara Croft and Ceres Moonlight standing behind me. I hadn't expected them to be here, defending me. You guys! The masked man regarded them briefly before tilting his head. The nightmare beasts? No one answered. But the carnage surrounding us, the countless corpses, made it clear. They had wiped them out. I see. He raised his sword. Everyone around me braced themselves. Oi, princess! Danzo muttered, sweat dripping down his face. I hate to admit it, but we need to work together if we want to take this guy down. Something about the masked man sent a chill through him. It was the same suffocating pressure he had felt only once before, when he faced monsters leagues beyond him. And he already knew. They couldn't win. I was about to respond, but the masked man spoke first. No need. Marva's style. Coffin of the dead. A torrent of black flames erupted, sweeping everyone away except me. Before I could react, I found myself sealed within a cage of fire, alone with him. From the very beginning, you were my only target. The others tried to break through, but the black flames refused to let them in. I see now. He was after me and me alone. As he walked toward me, his sword pulsing with silver light and black smoke, a twisted grin spread across my face. You're strong. You must hold a high rank among them. The masked man paused, studying me. What are you getting at? Nothing. I smirked, and removed the ring from my right hand. The moment it hit the ground, his eyes widened. A crushing force slammed into him. You! I raised my sword of pure aura toward him. Absolute zero. A storm of ice surged forth, threatening to swallow him whole. For the first time, his flames failed to consume my attack. My power had surged far beyond my previous limits. He staggered back, glancing at his half-frozen arm. But when he looked up, I was already above him. Let me show you the true power of the stars. Third sword, dimensional severance. A colossal white dragon materialized around my blade, its fangs bared, its aura threatening to devour him whole. For the first time, he felt it, a genuine threat. He unleashed the full force of his black flames, now surging with that silver radiance, forming a desperate defense. And when our swords clashed, the flaming prison shattered. I had poured everything into that final strike. If he survived this, I didn't know what I would do next. So please, burn. The star aura surged. I watched as he was sent flying, engulfed in a cataclysmic explosion that consumed everything in its path. My body collapsed onto the ground, searing with pain. The remnants of his black flame still clung to my skin, mixing with my own star aura, both forces tearing away at me. I lifted my gaze. Everyone around me did the same, searching through the destruction, scanning for any sign of him. And then, a shadow emerged from the smoke. Unharmed. My breath hitched, not from the fact that he had survived, but because of his face. His mask had been shattered, and beneath it, a boy, jet black hair, crimson eyes, a young face barely mature. The monster who had pushed me to my limits was a 17-year-old kid, a boy our age. He smirked, his crimson eyes gleaming. Not bad,